Hi, this is Dan and Lexi from Dan Schultz Outdoors, reminding you to keep the adventures alive. Hey y'all, I'm Johnny.
And I'm Colleen. And we're the Keel Quest. And we want you to keep the adventures alive. Cheers!
Hey, this is Darren from Ride Paddle Repeat, encouraging you to keep the adventures alive.
This is David from Beasley Ironworks saying keep the adventures alive.
Hey, Kevin with an A here. Keep the adventure alive.
Hi, I'm Dan Mayotte. Keep the adventures alive.
Hi, I'm Kevin Callan, the Happy Camper. Remember, keep the adventures alive. Awesome!
Woo, buddy! Shug here! Keep the adventures alive. I am.
Ethan here, the Avid Outdoorsy Guy, reminding you to keep the adventures alive.
We're John and Aaron.
Keep the adventures alive.
Hey everyone, it's Callan from Lure of the North, and I encourage you to keep the adventures alive.
This is Sky North telling you, keep the adventures alive. And now on with the show.
Well, hey, happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show, a show that brings you a lot closer to the great outdoors. My name is Dennis, also known as CANOEHOUND, and if this is your first time joining us here on the show, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. Hopefully we'll have a great show, and you'll learn a little bit, and you'll laugh a little bit, and you'll take something away from the show. We are live here every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you know what? It's always a good time. We always have some great guests and great topics, so if this is your thing, hopefully some point throughout the show, you might be able to hit that subscribe button, and for sure, please hit that thumbs up, as it really helps us get noticed by the YouTube algorithms. Anyways, tonight we got a great show for you, and as usual, I always like to let the chat populate for all the latecomers, so I'll take care of a little bit of our sponsorship news and a little bit of things that are going on, and then of course we'll get right into tonight's topic because we have a lot to cover. Tonight's show is brought to you by our good friends over at Algonquin Outfitters, who are currently celebrating their 60th anniversary. I've been mentioning this over the past little while, that they have a fantastic contest going on, and your time is running out if you haven't already entered. All you need to do is go to the description below. You'll find the link to their 60th anniversary contest. And by all means, check that out. It's going to take you a few minutes to get yourself entered, because it's like a 30 questions that they're going to ask you about Algonquin Outfitters. Answer, the more you get right, the more entries you have. But you know what? You can't win if you don't have a ticket. So by all means, please do get over there and get yourself signed up, because they have some fantastic prizes that they're going to be giving away with this whole contest. And as I mentioned, you have until the end of this month to get yourself set up there. Also, a huge shout out to our good friends over at Kid Products. makers of the Kid Twig Stove and a reflector oven. And they have a bunch of other outdoor products that are fantastic. The ferro rods and collapsible cutlery sets and blow tubes for the fire and stuff like that. Check them out. Their links are all in the description below. And also our good friends over at Hunter and Harris Paddles, makers of handcrafted, high quality canoe paddles. I always say it because I have a couple myself that when you first get your paddle, it's hard to dip in the water because these things are so beautiful. But you know what? They're made to paddle. They're made to propel you through the water. And Milan does a great job handcrafting these things. So by all means, check them out at hunterandharris.com. Last week, if you missed last week's show, you missed one heck of a good show. We had none other than Adam Schultz, who has just put out a new book called Whisper on the North Wind. I'm not much of a reader, and I can honestly say that this book had me enthralled throughout the entire book, and it was a fantastic read. And I got two more of his books he has 4 books. I have 2 more of his books that I need to pick up and read because he's got that uncanny ability to put out a really good product, and it's a really good read. And I've had nothing but great comments throughout the week in the live or in the chat and through emails and stuff like that, that Adam is such a well-spoken and knowledgeable individual. So by all means, if you missed that show last week, go back into our season 3 playlist and find it. And there's all kinds of other great shows with great guests and great topics that you might want to check out as well. So you can find that in our season 3 playlist. Let's see here. Just getting through the pages here because there's not a lot tonight. Special thanks goes out to all of our channel members, channel supporters, and those who have shot us super chats in the past couple weeks. It really helps offset the cost of producing this show, paying for the streaming software and all kinds of other things that you probably don't even think of in the backgrounds. But to all of you that have contributed to the channel, thank you very much. It doesn't go unnoticed. Everybody gets a reply no matter which way. And just to give you an example of a way that you could actually support the channel is become a channel member. Just below the microphone over here, you'll see a join button. You can click that at any time throughout the show or at any time that you visit the channel. And you know what? For as little as 13 cents a day, you can help support Canoe Hound Adventures and Canoe Hound's Outdoor Adventure Show. And basically, it all comes back to you or somebody in one way or another because we utilize that in providing swag for giveaways and all kinds of other things like that. But it also helps support all of this stuff, right? So any support is greatly appreciated there. Next week, put this on your calendars. I know I say this every week when I talk about the next week's show, but many of you are here often, and you know one of my regular guests on the show is Kevin Callan. Well, Kevin is celebrating a birthday next week, and we won't say how old quite yet, but you know what? We're having a birthday celebration for Kevin. It's going to be a roast of Kevin Callan. For those of you that don't know what a roast is, basically, we're going to gang up on the poor guy. We're going to beat him up on screen, right? No, we're not going to do that. We're going to be telling all kinds of funny stories and tales of Kevin's adventures and his friendships and things of that sort. And you know what? It's going to be one of them shows I have a feeling is going to make you laugh until you cry. So by all means, make sure you put it on the calendar next Tuesday, and you can follow us on Facebook at Canoe Hound's Outdoor Adventure Show. And we'll have all the details on there as to what is going to be going on. Yes, Kevin Outdoors. I think Kevin is more than 40. Yeah, I think he might be closing in on double that, but we'll leave the roasting for next week. Yeah, so be sure to tune in. Just to give you an idea of some of the guests that'll be on next week, we have, of course, the birthday boy himself. We also have Andy Baxter, Christine Redmond, CW Getz is going to be on the show. There might be a surprise visit by our good friend or Kevin's good friend, Gary the Puppet, Cliff Jacobson, Jerry Vanderveer, and there's going to be a host of others that are going to be on the show. So like I say, put it on your calendars. You're going to want to tune in for this one. And as I mentioned, any additional information, you could just follow us on Facebook at Canoe Hound's Outdoor Adventure Show and stay up to date on everything that's going on. 2 more things, and then we're on with tonight's show. If you have any hot topics or guests you'd like to see on the show, please drop me an email at canoehound@gmail.com, and I will do my best to make it happen for you. It helps make my job so much easier when I know the people or the topics that you want to see on the show. So don't be shy. Drop me an email, even if you just want to say hi. I'm a friendly guy. That's not a problem. Just send that email to canoehound@gmail.com. And then for tonight, they're, again, a little bit different of a format. Basically, I always say, put the questions over there in capital S, or the word question before your question in capital letters so that I can see it, or my executive producer, who I'm going to have up on screen here in a second. But you know what? We're going to invite people up here a little earlier. If you want to come up and ask a question that's very specific to the topic tonight, and we're going to try and get a few more people on screen. If not, you can wait till after 8 o'clock, or hey, just sit back, sip your hot chocolate or your beer, and enjoy the show. Anyways, just a really quick intro here to the guy behind the scenes right now tonight. This is my buddy Russell. How you doing, Russell?
Dennis, I'm good, and you look terrific, boy. You look really good.
You're rather. We're both donning the what do they call us? The PJ tops.
You wear it better. You
flannel shirts, right? Yeah.
Anyway, I'm really
Go ahead.
looking forward to tonight's show. We got some really, really cool people lined up here. Also, Kevin, which is cool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, hey, the roasting's got to stay till next week. Who knows, right? Let me get a little bit of an early start on that. That's all right.
A little poke in there.
Yeah. So by
right.
all means, Russell's the referee tonight. If you get out of order in the chat there, he's going to spank you. And if not, then you know what? He'll be posting some comments and stuff like that on screen. So Russell, do another fine job tonight. Thanks, buddy. Talk to you in a bit.
We'll see you in a bit.
All right. So without further ado, let's get on to tonight's topic, because like I say, we do have a lot. Tonight we're going to be talking a lot about winter camping and a lot of tips and tricks and all these things that if you're looking for the information on trying to improve your comfort level when you're out there in the backcountry doing some winter camping, or you know what, it could even relate to just being out there for a hike, trying to stay warm and stuff like that. But tonight we got some great guests on slate here, and we're going to get them all introduced right now. Let's see. First guest is a regular on the show and someone who's had more than a handful of snow down his pants. Please welcome to the live stream our good friend, Kevin Callan.
Hello!
How you doing, buddy?
Good. Cheers.
Yeah, you getting a little nervous for next week already, or?
I was nervous the day I was born.
Well, let's share some information with everybody tonight. Let's see. The next up here on panel is this young lady is familiar to many of us, and she takes us along on a lot of awesome canoe trips and backcountry camping trips, both summer and winter. Please welcome to the live stream, Camper Christina. Christina, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for appearing on the show tonight and coming to share your knowledge with everybody.
Hi, Kevin.
Hello!
Hello. Wait, here. I got my tuk-tuk.
Oh, you know what? Everybody gonna have their hats on. I should go get my big winter hat. Anyways, okay. Next up on panel, we've got another fellow who's been a regular on the show. He's been on here quite a bit. He's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to outdoor skills and backcountry camping and things of that sort. And he's recently became a instructor for Algonquin Base Camp Adventure Outfitters and Supply. Please welcome to the live stream, Pine Martin. How you doing, Martin? And you're on mute. You look dapper.
Thank you.
You're one sexy beast.
My favorite winter hat, all wool.
There you go. Yeah, last year you guys ganged up on me and you all had on these red and black things. And don't do it tonight, okay?
Is that a Stormy Cromer?
That's a Stormy Cromer he's got, yes.
Yeah.
All righty. We got two more people in the basement here. Next is I like to call him a Pinterest aficionado. This guy gets out there on his adventures. He's got great photography skills. He also has the great ability to shoot some really nice videos and tell a story in a short little Instagram video post. Not only that, he's really up on his gear because he is, a retail manager at one of the Algonquin Outfitters stores. I'd like to welcome to the stream, Nate Muskoka. How you doing, Nate?
Great. Thanks for having me, Dennis. Nice to see everybody.
Thank you for agreeing to join us. And then our last guest that we're going to be bringing up here on panel, and this is somebody that came highly recommended by Kevin Callan as somebody that I'm sorry I was not really familiar with, but in the short time that since Kevin let me know about him, I quickly watched a few of his videos, which were very, very, very informative. And I thought, yes, he'd definitely make a great panelist for this. Please welcome to the live stream, Dave Hatfield. How you doing, Dave?
Oh, all right, that's an honor. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, nice to virtually meet you, man.
Yeah. Great to be here. Thanks.
Awesome.
Here's
Okay,
Dave.
so we going to toast the evening first? Here's to staying warm, everybody. Alrighty, so I thought for tonight there, we got about 6 or 7 different categories that I wouldn't mind covering here tonight. I'll just go over them really quick so everybody has an idea of how the show is going to flow tonight. First topic is why winter camping. I'd like to know why you guys prefer winter camp, or maybe not prefer, but why you enjoy winter camping over the warm weather stuff. Then we'll get into a bit of gear talk. Then we'll talk about some clothing. Then we'll get into shelters, food, surviving cold weather, how to stay warm in maybe a survival situation, and then if we have time, if time allows, where to camp. Where's a good place to cut your teeth with this whole game. So let's start with why winter camping. You know what, Kevin? Let's start with you. Why do you enjoy winter camping?
Because I'm Canadian.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why would you live in Canada if you didn't like the cold? I don't get that. We're blessed. We got 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, winter. Love them all, and I love the change, the transition. If I just had to stay in August heat for the entire year, I'd lose my mind. So yeah, and I think actually it's just the glory of silence of winter. It's so quiet, you don't really hear anything. And that's rare in today's world, right? So, yeah, I like it. And I love the idea of snow falling on your nose and giving you a little tinkle.
Yeah. Or how about like your intro when I said you've had more than a handful of snow down your pants? Like, has that ever happened?
I'm not sure what you're talking about, Dennis.
So how about you, Nate? What's the allure to winter camping for you?
Basically, it just means you can extend your enthusiasm for camping year round. So a lot of the gear that we're going to talk about tonight is also good for those seasons that no one otherwise likes to be out in, like November and like April. But yeah, of course, it's also an extension of fun stuff that you like to do in the snow. So, I love backcountry skiing and I love snowshoeing, and this is just sort of an extension of camping and those other activities that allows you to get out there and find the silence that Kevin was alluding to. And it is once you find your spot, there's nothing quite like the sound of silence in the dead of winter.
Mm-hmm. What about that big thing called bugs? There's no bugs. Yeah, Christina, what do you think about that one?
I don't. Bugs are bugs, whatever. It's nice not to have them around, though, for sure.
Yeah.
I think my favorite thing about winter is the tracks. Being able to see what's really out there when normally you wouldn't know because you can't really see. Sometimes you see evidence, there's feces or whatever, but in the winter you've got tracks, so it's really cool to follow them and to see what's been there and see what's been lurking around your tent. And again, the camping is my passion. So I don't love the cold, but that's why I made the hot tents. But I like to be out there as much as possible. So it's fun to do that in the winter, and it's totally different and quiet, like Kevin said, very quiet, and nobody else is out, and I love that part.
Yeah, it's almost as if the snow has that. It provides that insulation buffer out there that just keeps things so mellow and serene, right?
Yeah.
And if you do hear something unorthodox out there, it usually means you have something sniffing around your camp, maybe a wolf, or won't be bears because they'll be sleeping, right? So, Dave, how about yourself? Do you have a preference for winter camping over summer camping, or do they both go hand in hand for you?
I love boats of all kinds, and I have a yard full of canoes, but like you were saying, no bugs, no bears, and no people. I really do like that. And most of my summers in recent years have been, occupied by other obligations. So winter's my time to get away. And I did a trip 2 years ago, just before COVID, where we only drove 3 hours northwest of Toronto. We spent 8 days and never saw a track from another human being the whole time. And that's really hard to find and wonderful to experience. It's a valuable thing that you so much appreciate later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I know how Martin feels about this stuff because I know he really enjoys his winter camping as well. Being an instructor now for Algonquin base camp. What are the types of things that you're actually teaching out there, Martin? Are you going to be doing some summer stuff, or is it primarily the winter camping?
I don't know about summer stuff yet. We haven't really discussed that, but they have a winter program, and what they are. So Algonquin Base Camp is based in Kearney, Ontario, just west of Algonquin Park, and they offer what are called supported gear rental. So it's your trip. You plan your trip, but you can rent your gear from them, and then they have myself and Peter Desmet as instructors, and of course the owners of the company, Robin and Chris Carson. They'll go out and they'll make sure that the gear is properly set up with you, and they will instruct you on the proper use and care of it. And it's really good for people who are sort of trying to up their game. So whatever level of knowledge you're at, they can help you with that. So if you're like sort of rank beginner, they can make sure that you have everything that you need. It takes all the guesswork out of it. And they can sort of quickly get you trained up. And if you're an intermediate or advanced, of course, they can sort of scale up the trip and make it sort of open up more challenges for you and offer sort of more advanced instruction. So that's what I'm going to be doing with them. So they offer cold camping in cold tents. They offer hot tenting equipment and trips. And this year they're doing something new with me, snow shelters, quinsies, and specifically igloos. I build igloos, and I've been building igloos for about a decade. So we're going to be offering a new style of cold camping. So these will be, all of these trips are typically on weekends, and they're one night or 2 nights. So sort of a nice intro for people who are considering it. It's particularly good if you're new, but even if you're not, there's a lot of sort of equipment that you might not be able to afford or want to afford yet. For instance, if you're a cold camper and an experienced one, you have all that cold camping gear, but you don't have a hot tent and a stove and all that, but you want to try it, this is one good way to do it without having to sort of lay out all that equipment cost ahead of time. Can I take a quick stab at what I like about winter camping?
Sure, yeah, for sure.
Just because no one else has expressed, and I'm certainly not in disagreement with anything anybody has said here. I have to echo everything that's been said about the silence and the stillness, the fact that you get to go out and snowshoe, which I love doing anyway. No bears, no bugs. All of that is absolutely true. But there are two things for me. One is the visual beauty. Winter is beautiful. We tend not to notice it if we live in an urban environment. There's a lot of dirt, a lot of slush, and it's just snow becomes an obstacle. You don't see its beauty, and you don't get to see how the woods and the forests and the lakes and the rivers and marshes, how different they are in winter. You get to travel places in winter that you cannot get to in summer. You can cross marshes and things like that would just take too long to get across or be too dangerous and risky and stuff like that. So winter affords you different views. And when you get to live out there, you really get to drink in a new kind of aesthetic experience of winter, completely different from when we live in an urban environment. And the other thing that I like about it is this, and this may sound a little bit vain, but winter camping is a little bit more challenging. It requires a bit more experience. If things go wrong, they can go very wrong in cold temperatures. And so there's a certain kind of satisfaction, a certain sense of proficiency and accomplishment that comes from camping in winter. I think practically everyone starts with summer camping and they eventually graduate. Their love of camping, it sort of grows and grows until they don't want to stop. And then winter comes along and then they just say, oh, well, I better learn what I need to learn and get what I need to get so I can extend my camping season. But with that comes a sense of accomplishment and mastery. And you feel like, I'm really testing my mettle out here by surviving out here in winter with just what I brought with me on a sled or in a backpack or something like that. And that is a great feeling. It's like that first time you go out on a canoe trip with everything in your canoe and on your back. It's a great feeling.
Perfect. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. You made a kind of a good segue for us here. They're talking about gear and how they actually go out there and make sure all your gear is set up. There's a lot of gear that could be related to both summer camping and winter camping. And then there's specific things that are, I guess, kind of rated summer camping gear and then winter camping gear. Nate, what can you tell us about selecting the right gear when it comes to, exactly that, selecting the right gear for, say, for instance, winter camping?
Sorry, to me, you're asking?
No, this is for Nate. Did I say Nate?
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
I think you said Nate. yeah, do your research and get information from more than just one source before you make any decision. Because you can read about camping gear and you can read about winter camping gear for as long as you have the time for online. And do your best to get it from sort of a reputable source where you can actually ask some questions and get some thorough answers, rather than just point it at a product on the wall, or one that pops up on your news feed. So I would say it's important to, if you're going to invest in this sort of adventure gear, it's worth it to get the good stuff the first time, of course, after you're able to try it out. And it's worth doing your research to make sure that you get what you need, that your needs are dialed in for. So ask lots of questions, read lots of stuff, and look to more than one source for gear if you have to, or for advice, or to get questions answered. So yeah, I would say it's a big investment. So if you're going to do it right the first time, and then that way you're not trying to hawk some weird Princess Auto stove on Kijiji next spring.
Hey, I got one of those things for my bush camp. But I have another stove coming soon too. So yeah.
Dennis, I bet you half the people watching right now probably have or had one of those stoves.
Yeah. And Dave could tell us a thing about stoves. I seen his video today on how he makes wood stoves and stuff like that. Maybe we'll dabble on that a bit. But Nate, when it comes to selecting gear, now you kind of hit that on the head right away, is to make sure you buy reputable gears, the good stuff. And that's something that is best done, in my opinion, by going to your local outdoor store or a place like Algonquin Outfitters, and actually speaking to the employees there, so that they have a knowledge base of the material, of the actual gear that's going to work. Don't buy the cheap $10 or $20 Amazon propane stove when you can get yourself something that's much better and it's going to last you years and years and years, right? It's not the quick sale. It's about the quality sale.
Yeah, and I can't fault people for not wanting to invest a lot of money when they aren't sure if they're going to enjoy it. But I would say there's a number of different ways, such as the program that Pine Martin mentioned, whereby you can rent and get kind of an ongoing lesson before you dive headlong into it. So doing it that way, spending the money on a rental and a lesson, and then choosing not to invest in gear, is far, far better than buying a bunch of cheap stuff to not spend very much to try to go out on your own the first time and make it work. Because that's often how people will wind up with a bad experience, and then of course it leaves a bad taste in their mouth, and they don't want to keep going with it. And maybe it's just because they didn't have the right advice, and they didn't have the right gear. So.
Mm-hmm. I always find if you buy the cheap stuff and then it ends up going in the garbage eventually, like after not long, then you end up buying the good gear. Now you've actually ended up spending more because you bought the cheap stuff on top of the good stuff, instead of making that initial investment. So Kevin,
touch and feel and get your hands on it is definitely important. I mean, there's some stuff that's really hard to buy physically when you live in certain places, but if you are going to make a purchase online, definitely do a fair amount of research. A lot of these little pop-ups on online stores that say, "Hey, how can we help?" are pretty much just chat bots that are basically sending an email back to someone at that place to see if they can get an answer for a gear-specific question. You're not, unfortunately, in a lot of instances, you're not actually typing back and forth with an expert. There's a few exceptions to that, but generally speaking, saving yourself the time and buying a book like Mr. Callan has can also go a long, long way in helping you make the right decisions, no matter what brand or no matter what store you're actually getting it from. So,
just showing everybody. I should have mentioned that in the Kevin's intro. Don't be embarrassed, Kevin. It's a great book, great resource. This is Kevin's second edition of his complete guide to winter camping. You know what? It's got some new stuff in it over the old version, the first version, or the first edition. And if anybody needs it, I see Russell's been posting the link in here. Check it out. You know what? By all means, it's a great read, and you're going to get some definite tips. And it comes with with what Martin was saying. It's great to have instruction and guidance. Whether it's YouTube, whether it's in-person training from somebody like Martin, or a good read, something to keep you snuggled by the fire and warm, and learn about what you need to do. Kevin, what are some of your favorite go-to pieces of gear for winter camping?
Well, my big thing right now is to push this guy down below David Hatfield to get his book done. Like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
So David, I don't know if you know David. Well, he's a great singer-songwriter and amazing albums he has out. But a big-time winter camper, and also legendary in winter camping to be one of us. And you've been working on the book for like 50 years now?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot the question. I just wanted.
I was asking, what are some of your favorite go-to pieces of gear when it comes to winter camping?
Yeah, sense of humor, because it's cold out there. You could be a little loony. Okay. This thing here.
Ooh, we got show and tell.
Yep.
I'll even put you full screen for that one.
Okay, an anorak. When I went up north and they introduced me to this, I actually had a Gore-Tex jacket on that cost me like $500, and the First Nations people said, "Yeah, you'll die." So they taught me basically all about this. Canvas breeze. So if you're going across a really cold lake, and you've got merino wool, so that's not a brand, it's a type of wool, and you've got wool on you, layer of wool, and with this on you, if you do sweat, you don't want to sweat, but if you do sweat, it will actually go outside your body onto your wool and then breathe through the canvas. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then what I have here is snowshoe hair. So when you're breathing, all that that hot
moisture
air
condensation
crystallizes, right? And so if you just had some synthetic material, it would just soak in the moisture. You don't want moisture. Okay. You want it to be dry in the cold. Right. So what happens is if you get all the moisture here, you just shake it and the crystals fall, and then that remains dry. Same with the hood as well. And actually, I got this coyote fur when I went to Sally Ann's and got a fur coat at the what's Sally Ann's? What would be
Salvation Army?
Yeah, and just did that. Right. So that is fantastic.
Is that a Lure of the North anorak?
Yeah. And these as well, only in extreme cold. Like if it's really slushy and blah, I wouldn't wear those. I would wear my boots with these things. Have you seen these?
No.
What?
We're seeing them now. Let's go full screen on that.
They're Neatos. They're on sale at Armor Surplus. So they're waterproof booties. You put your boots in. So when it gets slushing, which because of global warming, we're not really getting a true winter. These things are amazing. So you put your boots, or you put those in those, and you're good. I don't know. Footwear is really important out there because you don't want to get wet. You don't want to get damp. If you get wet and damp, you're going to get cold, which is why I kind of like hot tenting more so than cold camping, like in a 4-season tent. I get it. There's not an issue with going with a 4-season tent. You can go further in the bush because of it. I don't really care how far I go. But the hot tent is able to keep dry and enjoy yourself out there as opposed to trying to survive, which is just stupid. If you're going out in the winter time to survive, good luck to you.
Yeah, Brittany Richards was asking, is the anorak lined with anything, or is it just straight canvas?
No, it's the same canvas that your tent's made out of, so it's breathable. And again, so you're going across the frozen lake. It's really windy, so it's kind of windproof, but it's breathable. And yeah, Gore-Tex was a stupid idea. I wasted my money doing that.
There's another aspect too, right? So when you cross the lake and then you're facing the portage where there's no wind, you can pull out the anorak really quick, roll it up on the sleeves, tie it around your waist, right?
Yeah.
To the next lake, and then you put it back on again. It's really great to have a breathable layer like that.
It's fantastic. And you wear a sash. So you put a sash on so the wind doesn't go underneath you. And it's a good way to hold your axe. Or I got this a couple years ago. I love this. It's you wear the axe around your back. Because there's no way you're going to be looking for. I always use a belt knife or neck knife around my neck, and also an axe around my back. Because when you have that anorak on, or even your big puffy jacket, you can't get to anything, right? So it's always good to have those things outside your jacket.
Mm-hmm. I've seen a question here by David Bain asking about whether you prefer snowshoes or skis when you're traveling in the backcountry in the winter.
I think Nate should answer that because he's a big fat skier.
Yeah,
I don't mean that negative. But explain
yeah.
what I mean there, Nate. Sorry.
Well, Kevin, I have put on my COVID-19 pounds, that's for sure. But yeah, I don't know. I enjoy both, and as Kevin alluded to, I'm a big fan of the hybrid ski and snowshoes that you're starting to see a lot more of. Martin got a pair for me a little while ago. I know Mike Morton, who some of you are familiar with, is a big fan of them. Hap Wilson, Buck Miller, who crossed Algonquin Park a couple years ago in the middle of the winter, used them, and essentially they sort of combine the best elements of a backcountry ski and a snowshoe. So they're shorter, they're wider. They have a universal binding that you can jam a boot into. Not ideal for soft footwear, like Kevin was just pointing out. And Tori Baird found that out the hard way last year when she tried them. For sort of a slightly stiffer boot, they have a universal binding with a free lifting heel. And then a mohair skin in the middle of the ski underneath where your weight's going to come down into the snow, and so they offer you grip like a snowshoe and glide similar to a ski. And yes, I have been out with Martin and managed to pull my pulk through the snow and through the swamp and around the trees, etc., with them. So I'm a big fan of both, I would say.
Cool. Christina?
How long are they?
So they come in a variety of lengths. Yeah, they come in a variety of lengths, but generally it comes down to two main lengths. So the shorter ones are around 125 centimeters tip to tail, or 129 centimeters tip to tail. And then the longer ones are between 145 and 147 centimeters tip to tail.
Cool. You know what?
So
Christina just did a good thing there. Not to make this like a school atmosphere, but if anybody on panel here has something that they want to add to any segment there, just give me the right finger. let me know that you have something that you'd like to add to that. Yeah, David.
Well, if you're traveling in a hot tent, particularly if it's a traditional style and not a trekker, one of the modern ones, you have to have snowshoes for making camp. You really do. If trying to maneuver around in a little wee circle to set up a wall tent and do the firewood and everything else in any kind of skis is really, really awkward. So you have to have snowshoes. That's your backup. But if you have enough weight capacity in your sleds, like if you're not totally limited on weight for pulling, bringing a pair of skis is wonderful for day trips, right? You can cruise so much farther on skis on a day, particularly if it's flatland, you're not going up hillsides in 3 feet of snow with skis than you can on snowshoes. So if you have the luxury of both, man, it's fantastic. But if you only have one, I'd pick snowshoes.
It's almost like going to different places, or what canoe you use, right? And what vessel you have, right? Sure. I know people, even in southern United States, they don't use the hot tents, canvas tents. They use the nylon tents. And someone asked me the other day, like, well, I want to go up to Thunder Bay and go winter camping in a hot tent, but made of nylon. I went, well, you'll freeze, and it will be just frosted all up inside. It's a different environment. When I was traveling up with the First Nations people, the nicest things that the elder's wife ever said to me, she went to the elder and said, yeah, he's got bush time. And I went, how do you know that? She goes, you haven't took your snowshoes off yet, and we're making camp. And that was the biggest learning element I had. I mean, what do you mean? She goes, well, if you took them off, like, you would be waist deep in snow. At least you were not stupid enough to do that. And so she triggered that. Actually, I kind of knew what I was doing by not taking my snowshoes off when I got to camp. That was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Kevin, my wall tent's made of nylon.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
I had it deliberately made to copy an M&R tent.
Yeah. Single blade, double blade.
In 1986. And I found some uncoated ripstop nylon that breathes. It was 3-ounce fabric. And I had this original M&R wall tent copied in the nylon. And I put a breathable, flat, a screened window in the top back corner because I didn't think it would breathe enough. But in the winter, I never use that. The whole tent kind of inflates like a hot air balloon, but there's no problem with condensation.
Really?
Because there's no coating on the nylon.
Oh, really good to know.
And the whole thing only weighs 14 pounds, and it's an 8x10. So that was my sort of amalgamation of traditional and modern.
So, and you make your own stoves, David, right?
Yeah, I've made quite a few.
I'd like to get into that as a quick little topic after we finish with the gear, the essential gears here. Yeah. I want to try and just keep her on track here for a little bit, guys and gals. Christina, what are some of your your favorite go-to pieces of winter gear that you think are very essential?
The stove and the hot tent for sure.
Yeah.
I like to be warm. Snowshoes, of course. Like Kevin said, if you get to camp, you take those suckers off, you're going down. Usually, not this year yet.
What do they call that? Post-holing, right? Yeah.
Post-holing, yeah. That's a term I learned from John Van Berger. I guess, I don't know if it's Canadian. Is it American or Canadian, that term?
Who, John?
No, the term, post-holing.
Oh, the term?
Yeah.
I think it's universal.
I learned it from John. He's American, so I assumed it was American. But,
yeah, John was actually on the show last year, this edition of this show.
Yeah.
Martin, I know you have a lot of favorite pieces of gear that you like to take into the bush.
Yeah, boy, I've acquired a lot just in recent years. So about 10 years ago, I bought this contraption called the Icebox Igloo Tool that allows you to build igloos in any condition. So that's probably my favorite. It's really quite unusual, but that's because I like snow shelters. I really find snow shelters vastly more comfortable than any cold tent. I mean, a hot tent is a completely different thing because you can crank it up to 20, 30 degrees in there and you're down to your underwear and you can dry out all your gear and it can extend your stay in greater comfort. So a hot tent is its own kind of thing. But if you're going to be cold camping, a cold tent, I find actually quite miserable. I'm kind of skinny. I get cold very easily. I sleep cold, but a snow shelter is a fantastic thing. So, I mean, I grew up making quinsies, and then when I discovered that there was a way to make igloos in our local snow conditions here, virtually in any snow conditions, I was just absolutely sold because it's so much warmer and more comfortable in a snow shelter, and it blocks all the wind. It never gets that cold. I've never had a water bottle freeze in an igloo at any temperature. And I've camped really cold. Never had a water bottle freeze. Whereas in a cold tent, the temperature inside the tent is just a couple of degrees warmer than the outside temperature, and it blocks the wind. And it just keeps the precipitation off of you. But a snow shelter is blessedly comfortable. So I would have to say that the Icebox Igloo Tool is my favorite piece of gear. And then recently, as Nate was saying, I picked up those backcountry skis, and I absolutely love them. They're short, they're very, very wide. They have skins on them so you can climb up hills and stuff like that. I'm a terrible skier. I'm only just sort of figuring it out, but absolutely having a wonderful time. I have not hauled a sled with them yet. I tried one day, no success. So I have to immediately switch to snowshoes. But Nate, big, strong, strapping fellow, he and I went on a camping trip, I guess it was 2 winters ago, or was it last winter? I forget now. 2 winters ago, I think. And he had no difficulty hauling a pretty heavy sled on those skis. So, if you're a competent skier and you're reasonably fit, or in Nate's case, strong as an ox, you absolutely can do it.
Come on, Nate, show us the pipes.
He's a big strapping boy.
I'm still shocked at the reasonably fit comment. So,
well, this is coming from like a creaky old wrinkled guy over here,
Yeah. How about you, Dave? What's an essential for you when you're backcountry camping in winter?
Well, it's a whole assemblage of kit, right? And I've evolved that since I first got introduced to winter camping 40 years ago. And it's hard to pick. If you're going to go to the hot tent route, there's a whole, category of gear that goes with that. But if I only had to take one thing, it would be an axe. And I'm very, very particular about that. And I have an Elitis ox head 1 3/4 pound trail axe on a 26-inch hickory handle, and that is like another arm or another, appendage of my body. And if I only had one thing to take, it would be that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there what? Just to give everybody an idea, what would be one piece of gear that you should absolutely, no doubt about it, not skimp on? Like if you had to buy, pardon me?
Matches and a lighter.
Yeah. Or some sort of fire system, right, Kevin? What do you think on that?
Yeah. To get a fire going is crucial out there because you want warmth, right? So in the summertime, I don't bring an axe in the summertime. I don't need one. But in the wintertime, you need to get to the dry wood and split it and put it in the stove or put it in the fire if you're cold camping. Absolutely. And really good meals because it's that whole thing that your body is propelling you. So if you don't feed it like you would a stove in the tent, then you're not going to go anywhere. So yeah. And also a different mindset, to be quite honest. I know that sounds really stupid. I can go off and all gear all I want because I got tons of gear. I don't know how many tents I own. I have an obsession. But if I don't have a positive attitude, I'm not going anywhere.
Right. Yep. What about you, Christina? What's the one thing you say you would not skimp on as far as gear is concerned?
I would say a sleeping bag. I have a -40 Extreme Marmot bag that I got, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. I've been using it the last 2 years year round.
Yeah.
I bring it in the summer. I'm a cold sleeper, and I didn't learn this for many, many years after I started camping. And when I figured it out, somebody actually mentioned it on something I was watching, and I was like, oh, you don't get the sleeping bag for the outdoor temperature. I mean, you do, but you also get it for your temperature. And I sleep at home with an electric blanket every night. I get really, really cold when I sleep at night. So I find my -40 bag year round just makes me toasty warm at night, and I can sleep good, and I'm a happy girl.
Cool.
I gotta be warm.
Anybody else have a piece of gear that you would say is don't skimp on?
Yeah, I would
Okay,
suggest a sleeping pad. You need a sleeping system. So unless you're in a hammock or something like that and are going to be using an underquilt or something like that, if you're going to be sleeping on the ground or on the snow, whether it's a hot tent, cold tent, or snow shelter, you need to insulate yourself. So you've got to make sure that you have a insulation from that ground. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how good and lofty your sleeping bag is. You're going to be compressing the bottom of it. And the ground is an endless sink. And once you get a cold spot, like you start to feel that cold under your shoulder or your lower back or your hip, that's it. You're done. You can think, and everyone makes this mistake. I made this mistake when I was young, thinking, oh, I'll just get used to it and I'll warm up. You're not going to warm up the ground, right? The earth is an endless sink of thermal energy. So you can't. So once it starts, you're done. The only thing you can do is start to throw garments under there or a backpack under you and just get yourself up higher. So get a really good sleeping pad. So I use an XPED winter light. It's down-filled. It costs a lot of money. It cost me a few $100s, but I absolutely love it. And I use it year round. I don't sleep quite as cold as Christina, apparently. So I don't use my -40 bag. In the summer. I only use it in the winter. But actually, here's another plus for snow shelters. When I was sleeping in Quincy's growing up, we didn't have -40 bags, couldn't have afforded one. All we had were summer bags, which we doubled up. And the trick was to just insulate you from below. But inside a snow shelter never got as cold as it would in a cold tent. So I never needed a winter sleeping bag growing up. And when I'm in an igloo, I bring a 3-season bag. That's all I need. So bring some kind of insulation. You don't have to spend hundreds of dollars on a XPED down-filled pad. You can go out and just get a pile of wool blankets. I mean, they're bulky, but a stack of wool blankets, those close fit cell phone pads, bring a couple of them, get yourself right up off the snow. And you will sleep much more comfortably with whatever bag you can. But a sleep system is what you need.
But Martin, you have to bring it, right? You have to bring
Yes,
it
you have to
along.
bring it.
I was
You
on
have
a
to bring
trip, my second last trip, and getting ready to go. I looked at my sleeping pad and I thought, man, that thing's looking a bit battered. So I blew it up. I hung it up on the wall. And then first camp, I'm looking around at all my gear. Anybody seen my sleeping pad?
Oh, no.
So I spent 6 or 7 days, whatever that was, on a blue foamy this thick and whatever branches and canvas or whatever I could put underneath.
Yeah. Dave, I watched one of your videos today there, and it was the one on the sleep systems that you use in your winter tent. Can you tell us quickly in a nutshell your layering system that you promote in there?
Well, the most important thing is snow. Snow is not cold. A lot of people think snow is cold, right? Because, they're just used to getting hit in the face with a snowball or something. But all you have to do is put your finger down or put a temperature probe a little bit down in snow. And it could be minus 30 in the open air, but at just a few inches down, it's minus 15. A few more inches, it's minus 5, and not too far below that, it's almost freezing. Snow is warm. So that's the first thing. Sleep on the snow. And I know people disagree with me about that, but that's anyway. The next is I use just a ground sheet, but I use not Tyvek, the other one, Tyvar, which is house wrap, and it's a great ground sheet because it doesn't slide around like blue tarp does, and it's not noisy. It's reasonably water repellent, and it's a bit warm, but it's a good barrier. And then the next is a blue foamy, because when you're coming into your tent, you plop yourself down. You don't want to put a hole in your thermarest, So you have the thermarests build up around the outside of or the walls of the well tent. So you have a layer of the thin blue or whatever color foamies, and then you put your thermarest on that for sleeping. And no cold comes up into your shoulder through that.
Mm-hmm. They're also called closed cell foam pads, are they not?
Yeah. I'm just thinking of the medium tire old blue foamies, but
right.
Anything's better than nothing, right? So
yeah. So Nate, what's a big seller right now as far as air mattress or insulated air mattresses? Is there one brand or one product that's shining right now?
Well, right now, due to supply chain issues, it's basically whatever's in stock that is suitable for your size and your needs, unfortunately. I mean, the world of sleeping pads now compared to even 6 years ago has expanded incredibly to the point where you can buy a sleeping pad that's dialed in, fairly well to your height and your width. And how high off the ground you would like to be, whether that's foam-based or air-based. And then, of course, now you have a number of mats out there like Pine Martin has that have insulation built into them, whether that be down or whether that be synthetic like Primaloft. But yeah, I would say right now, as far as sleeping pads go, it's any of the kind of more dense sleeping pads with insulation already inside the baffles. So, and yeah, the higher you are off the ground and the more insulation that's in it, the higher your R value, and those are kind of the popular ones right now, because of course you can also use those all year round, and they're just good for winter camping as well. As far as a piece of gear that you might not want to skimp on, and if we're talking about winter camping and we're talking about hot tenting, because it seems to be kind of the route that at least everybody on this panel goes. Don't skimp on a stove, and get the right stove that's right for the size of tent you're using, which is very, very important and often overlooked. I think so much of the comfort and the attraction of being inside of a tent winter camping is that beautiful heat from a wood stove and kind of your occupation with, feeding the stove and that warmth kind of emanating from it that kind of makes your experience, what it is, aside from being outside of your tent. And so do not skimp on the stove and get the stove that's right for your size of tent.
Yeah, for sure. We've been putting a lot of emphasis on sleep systems, and I can't urge enough the importance of actually getting proper rest and being able to sleep when you're winter camping. To be awake all night shivering and freezing, it's not a fun experience. It will take the entire good time of winter camping right away from you. You know what I mean? It may make you rethink whether you ever want to do it again, because you're shivering, freezing all night. It's just not a good thing. Like camper Christina says, she's a cold sleeper. So if you're a cold sleeper, you have to have yourself a sleep system that's going to keep you toasty warm. What about the theory of while you're in your sleeping bag, about breathing into your sleeping bag? Does anybody have a little take on that? Because I usually frown against it. Exactly. Dave gave the thumbs down. What's the reason for that, Dave?
Moisture's got to go somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So the inside of your sleeping bag, the layer next to your skin, is nice and warm, and the moisture goes through it. But depending how cold it is inside your tent or sleep shelter, whatever it is, at some point the moisture gets up to the freezing point and then starts to condense. And it doesn't, unless you can keep that whole stack above freezing, it condenses and you end up with frost inside your bag. So you got to have enough warmth there, enough insulation to get it all out, like get the moisture out, the vapor out, and out the top. That's either that, or you got to thaw it out somehow and dry it out the next day.
There's a question here in the chat there. I see from Norma Vint. She's asking, do you wake during the night to add more wood to your stove? Is there a preference? I know some people do, and then some people don't. Who wants to take this one?
I have a strong opinion here.
Okay, well, let's have that strong opinion.
So I've been a cold camper most of my life. I only started hot tenting a few years ago. And I absolutely love hot tenting. But I'm from the school that says, if you're going to be winter camping, you need a sleep system that will get you through the night in case something catastrophic happens. Right? Fires can happen. You can, not during your sleep, but you can burn your tent down. Something can happen to your stove. I know someone who stepped on their stovepipe and elbow and couldn't get their stove working, and they had to sleep cold, and they're used to being up all night every 90 minutes feeding the stove, and they had a pretty miserable time. So my feeling is this: if you're going to be winter camping, you have to have a sleep system, just in the interest of safety, a sleep system that will take you through the night with just your sleep system. And, nothing more than a little tarp and a ground cloth, your ground insulation, and your sleeping bag. You should be able to get through a night. You don't have to love it, but you have to be able to get through the night without freezing to death and without not sleeping a wink. Sleep is critical. You need three things to stay warm in cold weather. You need fuel, you need food, you need to be hydrated. You can't let yourself get dehydrated, and you need sleep. Your ability to thermoregulate rests on rest. You have to get sleep. I've been out with people who just didn't sleep, and then they were cranky and cold all day. And I'm like, well, that's what happens when you don't sleep. It makes you cranky, but it also makes you more susceptible to the cold. Your thermoregulation goes down. So I think it's important that you have a sleep system that will get you through the night. So when I go hot tenting, I tell everyone who comes with me hot tenting, we're sleeping cold. Bring the clothes and the bedding and the sleep system you need. That stove is not going on in my hot tent, except unless you're like dying of cold or something terrible goes wrong. You soak out your sleeping bag, or you bust your insulation pad or something like that. But I don't want to be up every 90 minutes feeding that stove. It wakes you up. It takes you out of the sleep. You can't. People imagine just open the door and throw a log in. Well, what happens is the thing gets really hot, and then it dies down and gets cold. And so, you're opening your sleeping bag because it's too hot, and then you're closing it up because you're opening up because it's too hot, then you're zipping it up because it's too cold. All that banging around, opening and closing the door, playing with the damper. You got to, get your headlamp on, and you don't want to be doing this in the dark, right? It's all a fuss. It keeps you awake, and it keeps other people awake around you. Even if you decide to do it in shifts and designate that from this hour to this hour, there's one person who's going to tend the stove, everyone gets a poorer sleep. I sleep 8 to 10 hours when I'm hot tenting, but you're cold tenting at night. So that's my philosophy. I think it's just safer. You don't have to worry about a stove shifting in the night or anything like that. Not that I've ever had it happen. But I also just feel better. And one other point on this. Up until about 150 years ago, everybody in the world slept cold. Everyone in North America slept cold. We've forgotten that everyone slept cold. Our ancestors here in this country slept cold. If you were rich, you might have servants who would get up and start a fireplace in your chamber for you, so your room was warm when you woke up. but you slept cold. Everyone slept cold. We've just forgotten how to do it, and we think it's impossible. But everybody can sleep cold. You just need the right insulation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. How about you, like the rest of the panel? Are you?
I just make sure I go with my buddy Andy because he has to pee every 2 hours or every 20 minutes, I think. And so what happens is I sleep cold. I do what Pi Martin says. I basically will let the fire go down. If I go solo or whatever, I'll let it go down. I got a good sleeping bag. I'll be fine. It's a real pain, though, to get out of that sleeping bag and get that fire going again. I tell you that. But my buddy Andy has to pee all the time. So he actually does use a pee bottle because I finally gave him one. I said, stop going outside, pee in this thing. And he'll stoke the fire and everything's fine. So just rent him. I'll rent him off. Great.
There you go.
But Cameron, Christina, like I think it's important for you to step in here. Is like, so yeah, we can use a pee bottle. What do you use?
Yeah.
First of all, I have colitis, so my issue is not going pee in the middle of the night. So I have to go outside. I sleep hot. I let my stove run all night. I have a hot tent. There's a reason for that. I don't get out of my sleeping bag before I go to bed. I put a couple of pieces of wood right beside my stove, in between my sleeping system and my stove, and I lean over, I open the damper, I open the door, I throw the piece of wood in, I close the door, and I go back to sleep. And I actually automatically wake up when the temperature starts going down. I feel it. It's exact 3 hours. And that's like the amount of time that my wood will burn in my stove. And then as soon as that exact 3 hours is up, I'm like, oh, okay, I need more wood. And I'm fine. I'm well rested and I'm warm and I didn't burn myself down and I'm fine. So I don't know.
So
That's
the other aspect is on the trail, right? So if you're doing a traveling trip and you're moving every 2 or 3 days or something like that, the only thing that seems to matter after a while is weight on the toboggan. So I would love to have a great big stove that will hold the fire for 90 minutes or so, but I don't want to pull that up and down, break trail and deep snow and slush and portages and hills and all that stuff. So I'm like Martin, I bring enough bedding to spend the night cold. And sometimes also you get dropped off maybe late, drop off the train's 4 hours late, dropped off in the dark. It's pretty nice to be able to make a quick camp with just a tarp, sleep cold, and then, put up the wall tent the next night. I mean, I prefer Christina's warm tent, but
it's not that I can't sleep cold. I sleep cold in the exact same gear that I have with me. I would just put more clothing on. So I cold camp as well. I can make it through the night and not die without the heat, but I enjoy it. I have it for a reason.
But all these things are a compromise, right?
Yeah.
Here's an interesting comment from Brittany there. Cold makes you vasoconstrict, therefore makes you need to pee. Vicious cycle, right? Yeah.
There's an important point about that, actually. When you have urine in your bladder, your body has to keep any mass in your body at body temperature, right? So your body expends calories at night, keeping the pee warm inside you. So there's an old trick. You've got a pee bottle. Don't just lie there shivering, saying, should I get out? Oh, I don't want to go out. It's too cold. I'm just going to stay here and hold it in. And the act of holding it in and the increasing urgency of having to pee will keep you up. So I always tell people, just pee. Just grab a pee bottle and pee. It works for ladies. Get a wide mouth Nalgene bottle. Just cup it over the area. It all works for men and women alike. You don't need any gadgetry or anything like that. Pee into a pee bottle. And then now that pee is out of your body does not have to expend calories to keep that urine warm. But now you've got a hot water bottle of urine. Throw that in your sleeping bag and warm up your feet with it.
Tightly cinched.
Very tightly, yes, absolutely. I've never had an Nalgene bottle leak. I've never had a Nalgene bottle leak. So
Kevin says no, not tightly cinched. He wants to live loose.
It would be catastrophic if it leaked. You'd have a urine-soaked sleeping bag. But I've never had a problem with it. And mountaineers have been doing it. Mountain climbers have been doing this for forever, peeing into plastic bottles and metal bottles and things like that, and turning a problem, having to keep the urine warm in your body, into a solution by having this warm urine outside your body, warming up your sleeping bag. So it actually works great.
Okay, but what if you like apple juice for breakfast?
First of all, I don't.
Confusion.
First of all, I don't, and I don't know. There's a sniff test, I guess you could perform.
You
know what?
literally
It's
keep
a
your
different
feet.
color bottle, man.
Sorry, Mark, you literally keep your feet warm with your own pee.
Yes, but
Okay,
it's contained in a bottle. I don't pee on. Unlike you, I don't pee on my feet.
Okay. I just thought I knew a lot about
I'll
you.
take the stove, thanks.
So you know what? Okay, so we're talking a lot about stoves. I wanted to get into clothing next, but you know what? I think this is a better segue into talking about shelters, because there's an awful lot of questions in the chat right now about different types of tents and stuff like that. So let's move on to the tents. Later on, Dave, if we have a chance, I wouldn't mind talking to you about some of the wood stoves you've been making. And also, if not, then I'll definitely try and get a link in the description that people can check out at a later time, so that they could check out your video on your wood stoves and your theories on that, because you make your own and they look pretty darn cool. So yeah, so
whatever works.
Yeah. So let's get into the topic of shelters, our tents. I want to start with Christina on this, because Christina has made not one, not two, but three different hot tents. What can you tell us about them, Christina? Don't roll your eyes. Don't be shy. No, because you're actually featured in Kevin's book here on talking about your teepee style book or tent. But why have you made three different tents, and which ones hold what type of benefits over the others?
Okay, I'll try to do it fast.
Yeah.
The first tent I made was in 2015. I started my blog and stuff, and Camper Christina, and fall came, and I was like, I need to keep camping, but I don't like the cold, and I don't want to sleep in the cold. So I made a teepee hot tent. It's made out of painter's drop cloth canvas. It's an 8-ounce canvas. You can get it at Rona for like $50 a package. And I made this gigantic teepee. It had 10-foot poles in it, and has wooden kind of umbrella type top, and Princess Auto stove, which I learned how to use a wood stove on for several years, and I got that fire going. And let me tell you, when I got my Nyko Alaskan Junior, making fires was like so easy. So it was kind of nice for me to learn the hard way and then kind of go to something easier. 2 years later, I discovered that I couldn't take the teepee into the backcountry by myself. I like to go on solo trips, and I like to go on the backcountry. The backcountry is my passion. So I wanted a solo tent, and at 103 pounds with the stove, the teepee was not going to be going anywhere with me. I tried. So the solo tent is 8.5 by 8.5. It's a pyramid style tent, which basically it's 4 triangles with a painter's pole in the middle. Weighs about 12 pounds. The stove is, I think, 18 or 20. So it's great. It's easy for me to carry. It gets super, super hot in there because it's tiny. And then 2 years later, I didn't have a nice tent to kind of glamp in or like go out with friends. So I made the bigger hot tent, which is 10 by 14. And it has a frame in it, an aluminum with aluminum telescopic poles that I got from a place called JT's Fabric. And it has windows in it, lots of windows. They're really nice. And then I ended up putting a window in the solo tent as well. So I use the same stove for both the big tent and the solo tent. And the teepee's just kind of hanging out in my basement. And the reason being is the Princess Auto stove has such a tiny pipe that it doesn't draw the smoke up and out, and the pipe is really high. It goes right up to the top of the teepee and out the top, and the stove is just really hard to keep going in there. But I struggled through it for 2 years, and it taught me a lot about stoves and how to use them, and I love the other one now. So that's about it, I think. I don't know. Did you have any other?
Well, no, you know, I'll throw the question out there because I've seen somebody had in the chat. Maybe if Russell can find that question about, is there an advantage of, where was it there? One tent over the other, like a teepee style versus, say, for instance, an A-frame Or like let's talk about maybe an Esker stove or Esker tent versus perhaps a snow trekker tent. Two totally different systems. Kevin, I believe you own both, right?
I own way too many tents.
Yeah. So what can you say? Which what has a better advantage? Is there one that's a little more versatile than the other?
Well, yes and no. They all have their pros and cons, right? I mean, just last week I put them all up to just check them out, all my tents, and I went over the pros and cons. And sorry about the shaky video I did. Oh my Lord, I'm getting old. Anyway, but yeah, let's talk about the pyramid style. You got one center pole. So in Canada, you got the Esker and the Otok. In Quebec, you can get those. Probably somewhere else too, but those are the only two I know. And very simplistic. You got one pole that goes in the middle, and then you peg it out, right? So goods about that, it's really simplistic and cheap. It's not really an expensive tent. So if you're wanting to get a hot tent, you find out that you're starting at $1,500 plus. You're like, oh my Lord, I'm only going out once a winter. Why would I do that? So that would make sense. You don't even need the pole that you're bringing. You can actually cut a pole in the bush if you're not, in a busy park, whatever. So you can cut that, and you can cut your pegs too. So you can really bushcraft it really well for a cheap amount of money. There's two types of stove systems for that type of tent, though. There's a center stove, which I'm not sure what David uses or what you guys use, whatever. But the center stove, basically, a lot of people like that because it's a stack going up to the top, and then the smoke and embers go out, and it's not out to the side. So you sort of sit around that fire or that stove at night and converse with your buddies, and you cook on it, and it's sort of like sitting around a campfire. Or you can get a stove to the side, and then the stack goes out to the side, or even up too if you want, and that's different. I find those types a little bit warmer. I find the ones in the middle, you would think it would be warmer, but I think that the stove on the side gives you more room in the tent for everybody moving around and for sleeping and stuff like that, than the other. I don't like the stacks going straight up. It's just a personal thing for me. People put the smoke, what's it called? Smoke arrestor? No. Spark arrestor. Yeah. I hate those things. I don't think they work at all. Like, all I do is just make your stack all full of gook and like crap. What I do though, sometimes, as soon as I put the tent up, pyramid or the A-frame, I put my stacks away from the prevailing winds. So when the winds come in at night, and they will, all of a sudden at midnight, all of a sudden the storm comes in. You're like, oh crap! And you don't want to deal with that at midnight when it's minus 40, right? But if the smoke goes down your stack and smokes you out, you don't want that. Well, so if you don't do that, then get one of the small elbows and put that at the top, as opposed to a spark arrestor. So when the smoke comes out, smoke really can't go back into the pipe. Anyway, I'm blabbing on too much about that. So the pyramid is very simplistic. It's cheaper to buy in Canada. Maybe in the United States, I'm not sure, but it's cheaper in Canada for sure. And the disadvantages of those, I got to say, the guy ropes going out everywhere drives me friggin' nuts. It's like a spider web. You have to move around them all the time, and I get it. I get why the tent is set up that way. The A-frame, it's a aluminum A-frame style where you put the canvas over, and that's a lot better than back in the old days when we used to use the woods tents and we used to have to cut timber to make it a frame. That was. I worked in forestry, and when we worked in there, and also Fish and Wildlife, we would bring the canvas with us, and we'd have to cut all the poles for it. And it would take us 2 hours to make camp, right? So the A-frame, so the snow trekker is the Cadillac of tents. But that's the problem. It's really expensive, okay? So if you to get a snow trekker, especially if you're in Canada, you're talking starting at $1,200, $1,500, then getting it shipped to you, okay? So are you going to use it one out a year for that much money? So in the old days, I actually bought used ones, but I also bought one with my buddy, and so my buddies and I would actually go together, so we would do that. But the one also negative thing about snow trekkers is how to attach them. There's one compartment. I just got this in the mail today. Look at that. No, David, this is not a sexual thing. Okay. Yeah. All right.
Wasn't going there.
Gotta remind Kevin, this is a family show.
Sorry. Well, David started it. He started. I try to keep a straight face. So the joiners, they were aluminum, and the first joiners were ones that inserted into the pole. The other ones inserted outside the pole, but they're aluminum, they're welded. And now they have this, and it's great because it's really bright and orange. If you lose this in the snow, you cannot set that tent up. I'm telling you right now, you can't. Because I've been on TV where I lost this, and I had to makeshift something up, and I looked like I always look like a moron. But anyway, but when I get to camp, if I have a snow trucker, I put a tarp on the snow, and I put all my poles and all the other things on that tarp, not around the snow. So I got this in the mail today because they just got this.
I have a suggestion so as not to lose that critical piece of your snow tracker setup. Keep that thing attached to the ridge pole. Just don't ever take those off. Those joiner pieces, those couplers, keep them on the ridge pole. The ridge pole collapses, it folds up, right? Just keep it on. It takes up no appreciable space in your kit.
You're a lot smarter than I am.
Well, I mean, I've dropped mine in the snow too, and then wondered, like, where did it go? Like, if you drop it and you're snowshoeing around, then you're like, where is it? Right? Then you're literally digging for it. So it's happened to me.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So now I never take them off except when I get home and I'm drying out everything. Drying out my equipment. I take it apart then, and as soon as everything's dry and I'm packing it away, those couplers go back on and they stay on until I go out on the trip.
That's a really good tip. No, I don't know if I answered the question though. I know Nate just bought an Esker. Camper Christina makes her own because she's smart and we have no money. And that's smart.
I have money now because I made my own tent.
and Dave, I think you have an old style A-frame, don't you?
Yeah, I have an 8x10 wall tent A-frame style that is a copy of the ones that the M&R produced in the late 60s and early 70s. And those were pretty much the epitome of evolution of that style of tent, right? They were made of 4-ounce Egyptian cotton, that magnificent, wonderful stuff with 1,000 yarn weave, only weighed 4 ounces, breathed like crazy, had a fly sheet of the same stuff, right? And those were, and you were able to get those surplus for a few years, up till about the middle 80s, but then they vanished. And of course, if you don't put them away bone dry, they rot, they mildew, and they disappear. So I used to borrow one from a friend of mine who I learned all my stuff from. He used to trap in Val-d'Or. And but eventually, unfortunately, he wanted it back. So I took this.
Imagine that.
Yeah, man. So I took it to a tent manufacturer in Winnipeg where I was living at the time. And I said, can you make this tent out of ripstop nylon? And I'll bring you the fabric. And I gave him a detailed sewing plan, with the sod cloth and the hems and the tie downs and the loops and the thimble and all the window in the back corner, the little gear pockets. I had it all. I camped in it long enough to know exactly what I wanted. And then they built that for me, and I'm still using it. That was a 1986 thing. So it weighs 14 pounds, and it's an 8x10 with a 7-foot peak. And I don't take a frame ever. So I usually, I'm not going in a place like Algonquin or Callan where you can't find poles, you can't cut. It's not right to cut poles, in any of the close country or whatever you call that places. But where I go, it's all crown land. It's in the back. It's in the boonies. So we look for a place in the bush where if you cut one pole, you'll have a nice little glade to set this thing up. You'll bridge 2 trees, right, with that pole. And then you set the tent, you tie the tent under that, fly sheet goes over that pole. You just tie out to all the little sticks and bushes and whatever else, and you're set up fairly quickly. And it's light on the toboggan. It's only 14 pounds, no poles. So like I said before, all these things are compromises, right? If you're super, super comfortable in camp, you're not going to be comfortable on the trail and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, my snow trucker my old woods tent would weigh a fortune, but my snow trucker with poles is 32 pounds in the freight toboggan. So because Tim, I canoe or winter camp with him a lot, and he loves the Esker. And so when we go with him, he puts the Esker up. That's fine. He goes with me, and I put the snow trucker up. And it's all this debate back and forth. So Nate, what do you think? You just bought it. I just saw on your Instagram, you put your Esker up, your brand new one. So what do you think?
I've set it up a few times now, and I've been out in it for an overnight. And yeah, I feel you about the guy line thing. That's really the only frustrating thing for me, because Martin many times has tried to teach me some really good knots, and I have not retained that knowledge the way I should have. And so the guy line pulls are continuing to frustrate me. But overall, like the tent design and the simplistic setup, where I'm a Crown Land camper. I haven't been in a provincial park in years. I do like it. I really like the simplicity of a center pole. And as I kind of shuffle along this path, I will get better at the guy line thing. But yeah, I like the design. I like the size. I like the door. Yeah.
All right. So there's 3 knots, and they want to go into a bar for a drink. And the first knot goes in there, and he says to the bartender, "Can I have a drink?" "Well, we don't serve knots in here. You'll have to leave." "Well, that's not right." So he tells his buddies. The second knot says, "What? That's not right at all. I'm going in there right now." He goes in and he goes, "Can I have a drink?" And he goes, "Are you a knot?" And the bartender, or he said, "Yes, I am." And the bartender goes, "Look, I already told your buddy, we don't serve knots in here. You have to leave." Tells his other buddies. The third guy goes, "Well, this isn't right, but we have to think this through." So he just disguises himself. He ties himself in a knot and frays the top of his head and make it look like hair. And he goes in and to the bartender, he goes, "Can I have a drink?" And he goes, "Are you a knot?" And he goes, "I'm afraid not."
You know what?
Everybody put some laugh emojis in the chat over there. Make Kevin.
That's a long setup for a bad pun.
You know what, everybody? I can't believe this night is flying because it's 20 after 8. I really want to get tonight's swag giveaway in, and then we can go into overtime tonight if everybody wants to continue moving on, because we still got a lot to cover here. You guys are cool if I get this quickly in for the swag giveaway?
So we can use our P bottles right now?
You can use your P bottles right away. I'm going to put Dave, I'm going to put Kevin, I'm going to put Martin into the basement, because Nate and Christina need to help me with the giveaway. So you guys go ahead and have your P breaks.
I got to grab my, okay, 1 sec.
Okay. Well, hopefully everybody's enjoying the show tonight so far. You know what? It's a really cool go. There's so many topics that we could talk about, and this can go on forever and ever. And I know a lot of you have been asking questions in the chat. Sorry, we haven't been able to get to them, but hopefully we'll cover them as we continue on. Maybe towards the end of the show, I'll do a quick little rapid fire question and answer type of period. Anyways, for tonight's swag giveaway, we have both Camper Christina and Nate have offered some prizes, as well as what I have. I'm going to do two giveaways that will be given away as of Saturday night. Okay. Breaking away from the month ends type of thing that I've been doing, but I'd like to actually try and get prizes out to 2 different individuals. So for tonight's swag giveaway, each prize is going to consist of, I'm going to throw in a Canoe Hound Adventures prize package. And for one of them, Camper Christina has, what do you have, Camper Christina? Christina, sorry.
Free admission for my Backcountry Camping for Beginners course.
There we go. So you'll get the winner will get one of Camper Christina's courses for her Backcountry Campers for Beginners, and then Nate is offering.
Okay, you might need to add more people to the giveaway thing, Dennis.
Okay.
So we can do this into 2 different prize packs.
Okay.
Courtesy of Algonquin Outfitters and a few of our supplier friends at Algonquin Outfitters. So okay. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do this. Let's get your full screen on here.
I can do a course for each one too, if you like. So we have 2 full ones.
There we go. So we'll do 2 prize packages, and whoever wins is going to get more swag. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be awesome. Okay, full screen for Nate.
Okay, we've got a couple 14-ounce Yeti stainless steel camp mugs.
Ooh.
We have a Tubbs toque from our friends at Tubbs Snowshoes. Ooh, for the dog owners, we have a 3-in-1 dog leash bowl dispenser. That means poo bags.
Cool.
And a collapsible water bottle or water bowl. Oh, these are super handy for everything that we're talking about tonight for towing stuff. Those are Black Diamond Backcountry straps, gear straps. They're the good stuff. Atlas toque from our friends at Atlas Snowshoes. A couple of really nice viscose Kuma t-shirts from our friends at Kuma Outdoors.
Wow.
This is a local Huntsville company that's making fire starters out of beeswax cloth. So 2 packs of those, and they work quite well.
Awesome.
And then just for fun, and Dennis, you can put these in with your stuff too, a bunch of Atlas and Tubbs snowshoe buffs. Handy for being out snowshoeing or these days walking into the grocery store.
Wow, that's incredible. Thanks, Nate. Greatly appreciate that. That's incredible. So for the swag giveaway tonight, we're going to be doing 2 prizes. Each one's going to get a Camper Christina course, and each person is going to get like half of just the swag that Nate just showed, plus a couple of Canoe Hound Adventures prize packs. So we're going to be looking for 2 winners, and this is what we got tonight. We got our swag giveaway. What I need you to do is don't put your answer over here, okay? Even though the answer's in there somewhere already. You could send your answers over to coasprize@gmail.com, and sorry, that should be saying by Saturday. Okay. So you have until Saturday evening at 11 o'clock to get your answers in. And tonight's swag giveaway question is, what's the name of Kevin Callan's newly released 2nd edition book that he just come out with? Oh, did I just show that on screen? I want everybody to have a chance to win this. So hit your freeze frame, send your answers over to coasprize@gmail.com by this Saturday at 11 o'clock. The winner will be notified probably by like Sunday or Monday. At that time, we'll get everything all divvied up, information over to Christina because she'll send the winner the links that they need to do to get into her course. I'll be sending out all the swag that Nate's sending over to us. And yeah, man, let's share the wealth. Let's share the wealth. I'm going to leave this on screen for a few minutes. I'm going to get the rest of our guests back up, and then we can continue on with tonight's show. Let's see here. Let's try and get the same order, too, that we had. You're over here. And we got Martin. There's Martin. There we go. Welcome back, guys and gals. Let's see. Okay, I'll figure this out in a second. Anyways, so we're talking about shelters. A question I had about shelters. Has anybody tried these, and I hate saying this A word, these Amazon shelters that you're seeing, these little tiny teepees, and you get the little tiny wood stoves for them? Has anybody tried them? Are they a viable product? Are they of any quality? Nate?
Sorry, I'm going to have to. My lawyer has told me I need my requisite union bathroom break, and so I have a substitute that is going to quickly step in. That fortunately for all of us has a ton of cold tenting experience. Sorry, just one sec here. I'm gonna have to submit.
Oh, okay.
I can predict who this is.
Oh my goodness! Look what the wind blew in. How you doing, Jim?
I'm good. How's it going, everyone?
Good. What's going on?
Oh, look at him. He'll take any moment he can get to just push in there. Just.
I have to object.
Believe it or not, this was quite Nate's idea.
I have to object to this because Jim is an imposter here. He doesn't know anything about winter camping. He crossed the Ungava Peninsula and I believe he had a snow tracker, and he didn't even put it up right. I mean, it was only half put up the whole time he was out.
Well,
that's what a newbie he is.
That's very funny. Actually, that's one of the good things about having the snow tracker, because I didn't need to use the stove. I actually did have some heat, right? So I actually brought like a double burner Coleman stove and naphtha gas and used that for a little bit of heat. But what I did, because I got caught in this ripping blizzard on the first, I think it was the second night I was out there, absolutely terrifying. Kevin's talked about the details of that story more than any of us want to hear about. Yeah, so what I did was I set it up lower, right? So instead of setting it up as high as I could, I didn't use the very bottom connecting piece. I actually folded that back up in and tucked the tent under, just because that made the tent more squat, and it actually held the heat better and handled the wind better. And you know, I just kept setting it up like that from that point on the trip. I did the same thing in Baffin Island, and met some crazy winds, and that worked pretty good. So if you're ever in a position where you're trying to set one of these tents up in an emergency, I mean, that's a potential thing, you know, that you can do. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I take it all back then.
I think you set me up for that one. I think you knew the answer to that, Mark.
Yeah,
Pine Martin is
I might have heard that somewhere.
I would never do that to you at all. Pine Martin would, but I would never, ever set you up to never.
I appreciate that. Set me up to say something smart. I believe you. I believe you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, let's fire off at Jim a couple of the questions that we had earlier in the show there. What's your must-have or the piece of gear that you will not skimp on for winter camping?
Well, actually, I mean, I can't say enough about just having warm clothes. I know that's a bunch of different pieces of gear together, but it makes a big difference. But I remember one of the things where I was listening to this, and like Kevin was saying, how I wanted to jump in, which isn't really true. I kind of did at that moment. I used to have one of those octagonal tents. I got it in Delaney, Northwest Territories, when a guy told me I was going to die going out in my like mountaineering tent. It was like one of the stretch domes from Sierra Designs, and I used that for a long time. And yeah, having the guy lines, you know, I didn't have the side poles, and one guy line's going way out like to the closest tree. It might be 50 feet away, and you're tying on extra cordage, and one guy line's here and all that. And probably a lot of people know this, but I didn't actually figure this out for a while until I went camping with somebody else who had an Esker. And I was like, why didn't I think of that? But it's basically like, you know, you can tie those guy lines off to a cable that runs between two trees. Maybe all you guys know that. I really didn't figure that out for a few years. And I literally had guy lines like ducking all over like this. So like, you know, because you need to put it straight in line with where that guy goes on the tent. If you move it this way or that way, you know, your tent's going to start sagging, and it's not going to look cool in your photos, and it's not going to be as effective, right? So yeah, I just put a when I don't have a tree that's close enough, I put a line between two trees and just tie it off to the middle of that line, and that way I can say I'll do that a few times. That way I save all the like guy lines being all over the place like it always used to be. But anyways, my brother uses that tent mainly now, and I've been using like a snow tracker mostly anyway, so I don't have to deal with it, but it works.
Cool.
So Dave, down the bottom, Dave, if you don't know who Jim is, I think you do, but just and anybody else out there that doesn't know, and I'm just joking around with you because I know you quite a bit, but you went on that winter trip in the far north, and then a few days later, you went with your brother and won a lone show, right?
Yeah, so I did a 36-day solo crossing of the Ungava Peninsula in the winter. And then I came back from that. Then me and Tori paddled the Porcupine River in northern Saskatchewan. And me and Ted went on a lone and spent another 75 days surviving on northern Vancouver Island with...
Yeah, but you're not an addict, right? You're not an addict. You could quit anytime you wanted.
Well, that was for a TV show, a survival TV show called Alone on History. And we actually won $500,000 to split between the two of us because we lasted, whoever can last the longest wins. So we had to film the whole thing ourselves too. There's no camera crews in there or anything like that. So yeah.
Okay, but I'm going to give you guys all a question. What stake peg would you choose? Here's one here. I got this at the Army Surplus. It's very lightweight aluminum. 99 cents. A plastic one from Walmart, right? An aluminum one, I don't know where I got this from, but I got it.
It's already bent.
I got this one. And then I got this big iron thing that just weighs the weight of maybe
Bayonet.
David's tent. All right.
What's your pick, people?
I don't take any tent pegs ever.
Neither do I. Never.
Snow anchors.
Option one.
I like the ones with the long flat ones with all the holes in the middle, because in the winter I use them as snow anchors, and actually I'll dig a T into the snow, especially in the Arctic where the snow's hard packed, and I'll run the guy through the middle hole of a fat wide, like I think they're Mech brand, and I'll run the through the middle, and I'll anchor that. I'll dig a T in the snow, and I'll anchor that right down into the snow, and it's crazy like how much pressure it can sustain, like 80-kilometer-hour winds without pulling through. But if not, I take the big green one, which is kind of like a snow trekker one, and I just tie the guy to the middle of that and use it as a snow anchor if I was gonna use a peg.
Well, then, David, you're saying you don't bring one, so what do you use?
I never tried to stake in. Well, I'm camping in the forest, right? In the boreal forest. I'm not going across Ungava where the trees are only 6 feet tall, that kind of thing. So
there was no trees.
And I think it's important actually to say that in winter camping, you don't camp in the same places you do in the summer. Like, you're not looking for exposed places. You don't want view, because if you have view, you have wind and cold. You're looking for protection. So I go for a thicket in the bush, where, like I said before, you cut one pole, and then you've got a nice little square where you can set up your tent, and tons of room, tons of things to tie out to. And you walk 100 feet to go to the nice view, where the wind is blowing. That's what I do. So the wall tent has, the one pole bridged onto 2 trees, and then you just tie out to other trees and bushes. I don't stake to anything. However, the sidewalls of my tent, the sod cloth, right? The polyethylene sod cloth. In the summer, I pull that in for bugs, but in the winter, I take that to the outside and I just heap snow on it all the way around. That's it.
All right, I got another question for you, Dennis. Sorry, I got 4 winter books that are my favorite, so I'm going to show them all, and everybody here has to choose their favorite, including you, Jim. Nate, he's not allowed back.
I don't know where Nate went. He hung me out to dry here. I was unprepared.
All right, so here's the first one.
Paradise Below Zero.
Okay, who here in the panel has that book? Anybody?
Negative.
Dave does.
Only one?
Huge influence. Huge influence.
You know what? Dave's the only one that knows what the hell he's talking about. All right.
Didn't say I hadn't read it. It said I didn't own it.
This one.
Yeah.
True North.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah? Thumbs up if you have it. My God! It's just David. What the hell?
Well, I used to hang around George and also the Snowwalkers group there in Vermont, so they have all those books, right?
Oh, they do. I know. We Dave and I don't have a life. All right. How about this one?
Oh.
Jack London Stories.
They build a fire.
Cool.
Build a fire.
I have that on an audiobook.
Okay, you got half a thumbs up there, Camper Christina. All right.
Half a thumb.
That's it.
Oh yeah,
That's the Bible.
Yeah.
That's the Bible.
I haven't read it though.
We were talking earlier about the best piece of gear. We were talking earlier about the best
book
piece
I
of
want to
kit.
pick up.
The best piece of gear to take on a canoe trip, it's a good partner. And that book makes it quite clear. Garrett and Alexandra, absolutely. You got to have a good partner. And
Yeah.
that's better than any piece of metal or any piece of canvas.
Oh my Lord! And who said they actually own it, but they didn't read it?
This is my winter camping partner right here.
It's only a 1-dog night.
I used to travel with my husky Malamute Buck, but I think that's a great tip. If you teach your dog how to pull a sled and you're going traditional winter style camping, great companion to have out there, and they just love it as long as they got a nice fur coat. You pull a sled, they pull a sled, and it's awesome. You can travel a little bit heavier. They can pull all their own food. And
I used to do that for solo trips. I had one dog, with a lightweight rig, and she just pulled her heart out. I would help her on the uphill grades, with a line to the breastplate of her harness. and then I'd drag on the downhill grade so it didn't overrun her. And then at the end of the day, I'd be faced with all this camp building, and she'd just turn 3 circles in the snow and go to sleep. Good partner. Yeah.
Amazing.
Cheers to dogs on trip, eh? Cheers to your dog, Jim. Yeah.
Okay, y'all. Let's try and get back on track here.
One more thing before I put Nate back in. We can blame Nate for throwing this off course. How about just lifting up the side of the tent and pissing outside?
Well, mine is weighted with snow, but whatever.
Well, you can just kind of lift it up, or a little, maybe in some people's cases, or and just kind of do your business out the crack. It might be a little harder for the ladies, but you kind of knock your snow off around it. But if you're sleeping near the edge of the tent, just lift up the bottom of the wall and pee outside and put it back down. I mean, I've done it before. Nobody's ever been hurt.
I can't lift the wall of my tent because it's a snow trekker. It has that little skirt outside. You throw snow on it, and that holds the tent down and prevents air and spin drift from blowing into the tent. But what I have done in the middle of the night when I had to go and I didn't want to go outside because it was kind of a blizzardy condition was I just peed right inside the tent. I just had a tarp, a sort of a floor tarp, just pee, and it's hot urine, so it just drills through the snow. It goes through several feet of snow straight down. But where did I learn this trick? I camped in igloos and Quincy's for years, and that's what you do. You can just pee.
I wanted to say that, but I didn't admit it. That's really what I do quite often. Like
it makes a pencil-sized hole in the snow, drills right down. You throw a little snow on it. You can't even tell anyone ever peed there.
Oh, you guys are all pigs. Okay?
It freezes. There's no odor.
No, you're giving men bad names by doing this. You're making men look like they're animals. Okay?
This is like an entire another show. Eh? How to pee in the how to pee.
There is an old
pee in winter.
Quebec,
All right, guys. Nate's going to jump back in. He's relieved himself, and been nice chatting, everybody. Nice talking.
Good seeing you, Jim. Thanks for popping in for a second. Okay, so I want to get on the topic of clothing. Kevin touched on the anorak earlier. There are some do's and don'ts when it comes to trying to keep warm, and your clothing is a key instrument in doing so. Let's do a quick comparison on maybe polar fleeces versus say merino wools or things of that sort. Does anybody have a preference one over the other? Let's start with Nate because he definitely has the knowledge of this stuff.
So I think probably a lot of people watching this show, and from what I've seen online, people are getting more and more familiar with the value of merino wool. But when you go to buy merino wool, again, do some research because there's a lot of merino wool out there. You can buy things that say merino wool at Costco, and you can buy things that say merino wool at Sporting Life. But they're often, a couple very different things. So first of all, look at the merino content. So somewhere on the label. So first of all, merino wool is a natural fiber, and it comes specifically from a breed of sheep in New Zealand and some in Australia. And New Zealand has a climate that is, somewhat similar to what we might experience in areas of North America. And it's a natural fiber that's developed over time to keep those sheep cool in the summer and warm in the winter. And it does the same thing for us when we wear it next to our skin. It tends to retain a lot of heat, and it retains that heat even when the fiber gets wet. So it's very valuable stuff to have. There's definitely some pros and cons when it comes to comparing merino wool to synthetic insulation, such as you might find in brands like Under Armour or Helly Hansen, which used to be called Lefa. But overall, if you're going to get merino wool, and it's a fantastic idea, and everybody should have a couple of good merino wool pieces in their closet, whether they're summer campers, shoulder season campers, winter campers, all of the above. But look at the details of how much merino wool is actually in that garment, because like I said, you can get merino wool at Costco that is $30. But when you look at the actual merino content in that piece, all it needs to have is something along the lines of 33% content merino wool for them to call it merino wool. The rest can be made up of polyester and nylon usually.
Not even in that case, because I do have a garment from Costco, the ones that they had there that they were selling big time last year, and it was 10% merino wool content. The rest was polyester and spandex, or the stretchy stuff. So
big differences in the price of merino wool. So be careful what you pay for, because again, if someone purchases something that says merino wool and it doesn't perform to their expectations or what they've read online, then they can wind up disappointed. So check out the content of the merino wool, and then also check out the grams per square meter, or the GSM, and that will, in a good mid-weight to heavyweight garment, start at about just below 200 to just above 300, and that's kind of the weight you're looking for, and that refers to sort of the overall density and the tightness of the weave, etc. In that garment, and the low 200s to above 300 is what you're looking for in a really good merino wool base layer or mid layer, for that matter.
What about for somebody who might be allergic to wool?
Well, I would look into it, because the merino wool is a lot finer of a fiber than regular wool. So these aren't your grandmother's itchy socks or the sweater you got for Christmas. It does not produce the same reaction. The fiber is much finer. The other point about the fiber of merino wool is it's fine to the point where your molecules of sweat cannot adhere to it, and of course that has incredible antibacterial and antimicrobial qualities. So it may not be the same wool that you remember being allergic to, or that you think you are allergic to. So for those with severe allergies, then I would look into a really good sort of quality polyester nylon, and often we refer to that as polar fleece, but there's many different grades and weights of that as well. So that's going to be your next best bet. Some of the pros to synthetic insulation or synthetic base layers and mid layers are that it's cost effective, it's not as expensive, it breathes really well, and it tends to be a little bit more durable than some weights in merino wool, generally speaking, which is why people will use it for higher aerobic activities such as hockey or snowshoeing or downhill skiing, because it wicks the moisture away from your body very rapidly. It doesn't retain any of that moisture, but it still has some good thermal value until your body cools down, and that is sort of its downfall. So it's not good for stop and go activities, and it's not good for activities where you're going to be stopped for a fair amount of time.
Okay, and what about when it comes to say footwear or jackets? Is there anything that somebody should be looking for? We'll say with footwear first.
Well, Kevin's going to hold up his footwear combos again, and I thought he was going to hold up the anorak again. Those are all good things. I would say, if you're a shoulder season camper and looking to use gear that you have, sometimes you can combine pieces of gear you might have in order to make a good system, such as a thin merino wool base layer with a polar fleece mid layer and a puffy, a good down puffy, right? So that can be a good sort of 3-layer system that's good for dry and cold temperatures. But yeah, nothing beats sort of the tried and tested breathability of an anorak. That's very good show and tell skills, Kevin. Yeah, I would say if you're going to pay for down, again, look into what you're paying for. There's a big difference in the quality of down fill. The higher number, the better the loft. So it doesn't necessarily mean there's more down in that coat. What it's referring to is the quality of the down and the amount of the good fluffy stuff that you're actually getting. And then you can get into how much down is inside the coat. So again, if you're going to fork over money for a down piece, whether that's an outer layer or a mid layer that you're going to use, know what you're buying. A piece you might pick up at a kind of a big box store that says it's down. If that has a very low hundreds number rating, that means that down isn't necessarily very good quality, even though the garment might feel heavy. So what they've done there is they've stuffed a whole bunch of down into that garment, lower grade down into that garment to make it feel heavy and warm, where in fact it does not have the kind of good down qualities that you're actually looking for when you want to buy a down jacket. So what you're looking for is a high loft rating and then a high fill rating to the point of what type of garment you want to have. So obviously, if you want to layer a shell or something like that over your mid layer down piece, You don't want it to be super, super thick, but you probably want it to have a good high loft rating. So there you're looking for something probably above 500.
Okay. And when it comes to layering clothing, sorry,
I just noticed that Gord was making a good point that it sounds awfully expensive, and it is. Winter camping is awfully expensive because you're not going out as much. And Dave, can you show some points of you make a lot of your own stuff?
Yeah, I do, because like I say, I was turned on to this whole experience by a buddy of mine who was a trapper in Val-d'Or and learned his skills from his uncle, who went into the bush in the 1920s as a trapper, came out in the 30s, but then it was the Depression and he could live better in the bush than out of it, so he went back in. And then he came out in the 40s, and then it was World War II. Again, bad idea, went back into the bush. And so anyway, his nephew, my buddy, picked up all this older technique and older skill and older equipment style of living in the bush. And it's not camping, right? It's living in the bush. And when I traveled with him a bunch of times in the middle 80s, I just kept saying, hey, that's a good idea, about every 20 minutes for the entire trip. I got boring. So I've copied a lot of those items, a lot of those ideas, and then moved them to modern materials whenever I couldn't find the old materials or I saw some kind of an advantage, because I'm not, stonewalled by just, old-fashioned stuff. But in general, I have found traditional materials tend to be better than modern materials in a hot tent winter traveling environment where you're away from the road, away from your cars, and all that kind of thing. You don't want something falling off the ridgepole in the tent, touching the stove and melting, right? I mean, because it hit the hot stove and then disintegrated. I prefer wool. Like what Nate is saying with wool, it's wonderful. Canvas, same thing. It'll singe, but it won't melt. And it breathes. The wool that Nate's talking about is so pleasant on your skin that perhaps someone might have thought that they were allergic, but perhaps it was just an irritation response. Because everybody's had those old scratchy sweaters from their Aunt Edna, that just with the moose on the front and all that. Anyway, down, there's nothing better than down. I mean, you're talking about the fill rating of down. Yeah, that's superb. And it's also a question of volume and weight on a toboggan, right? You can take a puffy, big down coat that makes you look like the Pillsbury Doughboy, and it's this thick on your body, so you're warm, and you can scrunch it into a little wee bag this big. And when you're working hard, you don't need a coat, right? When you're breaking trail or pulling a toboggan or cutting wood or something like that, you have to vent heat, so you're down to 2 or 3 breathable layers on your body. But as soon as you stop, 2 minutes later, you need a coat, and there's nothing better than that great big thick puffy coat that you pull out of the little wee stuff sack and you shake 6 times, and then boom, there you are, a walking bundle of warmth. So I really do appreciate the traditional materials whenever I can make them work. But like I said before, my tent's made of nylon, so you take whatever is best.
Nate?
I saw Gord had a question there just about reputable merino wool companies, which is important. There's a lot of companies out there that make merino wool products. I'll give you 3 reputable ones right now, where if you're hunting for Black Friday deals, best of luck to you. So Icebreaker is probably the best and most well-known. And it is extremely good quality, and it is a New Zealand company that basically they can be credited with starting the sort of the merino wool furor that we now are all enjoying as outdoors people. Smart Wool, who wasn't too far behind them. And then, of course, Wool Power from Sweden. So those are 3 great brands to source out merino wool. And again, you want to check the weight and get the proper weight for what you want to do with it. There you go. And yeah, also they have sustainable practices. So a lot of these farms, the sheep are free range. They don't practice museling, which is a really disgusting procedure that basically lops the sheep's back end off to avoid bacterial infection from sheep crap into the wool. So they actually pay a little bit more money into the process and clean the wool instead of just causing dire pain to these sheep. Yeah, those are three reputable companies. So like I said, there's a lot of companies out there making merino wool stuff, but because of the scale of the companies I just mentioned, they actually get the good choice of merino wool from the wool harvest first, so it's good stuff.
Cool. Christina, you had something that you wanted to mention. I believe it was about Gord's question about winter camping being expensive.
Yeah, I think Gord, I responded in the chat, but he had said that it sounds like it's such an expensive thing to do. And yeah, it takes time to get the gear and the hot tents and the stoves and all that stuff, but you don't have to spend a ton of money to start. My first time winter camping was at New Year's Eve at Mew Lake Campground in Algonquin. I camped on a hydro site. I used a summer tent. I threw a tarp over top of it. I put a space heater inside of it, and I was comfy cozy. I had a friend come along who thought I was insane for going camping in the winter, and she had a great time. We were sitting in the tent in our tank tops and sweatpants, and it was cold, warm and cozy. And I did actually have the teepee at the time. We used it to cook in because I was afraid to sleep in it at that time. I didn't know if it was going to keep me warm, but I don't have any problems with that. And I did that for a few times before I started getting gear together. And, wool blankets. Everybody's got wool blankets at home. Go to Value Village, pick up some cheap wool blankets. Get one of those, those mats you put in your car windows for the sun, those foil things. You can lay those down on the snow and use those for insulation. There's a lot of ways around spending a ton of money. Yeah, okay, you don't have a hot tent or stove, whatever, but you don't have to start there. You can start with some basic things that you're already using in the summer or the fall or the spring and go from there. Just try it out first, practice in your backyard or somewhere safe, make sure that, you're going to be comfortable. But there's a lot of ways to get around spending a ton of money to start out.
It's amazing at some of the things you can actually find at a thrift store or a Value Village or something along that lines, because you look at somebody like, and I believe he's in the chat tonight, David Bain, he's always posting on Facebook about his most recent find that he picked up at a thrift store, for a couple of dollars, wool blankets, twig stoves, different things like that. See, I'm paying attention, David. But you know what? It's amazing what you can find resources on, Kijiji, Marketplace, Craigslist in the United States. There are a lot of resources that can get you into this game without dropping the big dollar until you start building on your collection of fine gear, right?
Yeah. And my solo hot tent cost me $250 to make, so.
Yeah.
But some of this winter gear is very long lasting, right? I said before, this wall tent that I'm still using, I had made for me in 1986.
Yeah.
And the next year I got 2 down sleeping bags from Mountain Equipment Co-op to sandwich one inside the other. I'm still using them. So, the cost per year ends up being nothing, really.
Yeah.
There you go. Brian J says, I have several wool blankets from the thrift stores in pink. That's all I find too.
Well, you won't lose them in the snow.
Yeah, I'm finding too that Facebook sucks for a lot of things. Marketplace is quickly becoming a pretty good spot to find stuff if you know what you're looking for. So, for instance, somebody's grandmother won't post their wool blanket under, camping stuff. They'll post it under household items. And so if you refine your searches, then you can come across all kinds of goodies, good cast iron frying pans, wool blankets, things like that will often pop up under, kind of the household umbrella, rather than what we would think of as the outdoors umbrella. And that's been almost more so than Kijiji been a really good resource for me anyway. So something to keep in mind.
Wool pants, old-fashioned wool dress pants,
Yeah.
or Army surplus officers pants made out of whipcord wool. Wonderful. Absolutely. And you can't buy them new. They don't exist.
Right. Remember the day of Gore-Tex? Is Gore-Tex still a big thing?
Not in the winter. Doesn't work.
Doesn't work in the winter. Not the boots, not the jackets, nothing.
Nope.
Okay.
It works above freezing, doesn't work below freezing.
Okay, so it's more of a summer or fair weather.
Yeah, a lot of winter gear is sold as being rainproof, but that's not even a consideration if you're camping like north of Algonquin. Like sometimes it rains, in warm fronts, but and then I just put on a plastic bag of some kind. But I don't make any consideration whatsoever or allowance for rain in winter camping. I just go farther north.
Mm-hmm. Got a question for you, and you know what? This is a really cool question because I actually have a line on one, and I probably have one coming my way very soon as well. The OG in the canoe's asking, when he was a kid, he had the old canvas tents. Are they any good? If someone could still find one for a hot tent, don't touch the walls; it will leak. We were told. Would an old canvas tent like that make a good hot tent if it was converted with adding a stove jack and?
Yep.
Anybody?
I would definitely do that. That's what I have. I have a canvas tent. You can get waterproofing spray if you want to waterproof it. You can get fireproofing spray to do that as well. And you can get a blanket from Princess Auto for, I think they're $25. You can make 6 stove jacks out of it. So easy peasy, sew it in there and add a stove.
Oh, I'm excited because I have one of them coming my way.
I can help you in any way. Send me a message.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know who that
Thanks,
was.
Karina. I appreciate that. Greatly appreciated. You know what? Let's get on to some food. Everybody likes food in the backcountry. What are the staples? Obviously, we need high energy. Therefore, we need a lot of calories. Kevin, what are you cooking for us now?
A Dutch oven.
Nice.
So for hot tenting, not for cold tenting. This aluminum one because it's lighter. I put parchment paper in there, so easier to clean, whatever. And I do lots of stews, curries, spaghetti, pastas, whatever. And yeah, that's why I love hot tenting, because if you're cold tenting, you're making something really quick and then going in the tent because it's going to get dark, and then you're going to read a book and hope you don't freeze through the night. And where hot tenting, you actually spend the night cooking and then conversing and having a wee dram with your friends or playing cribbage, or if you're by yourself reading a book, whatever, talking to yourself. But it's a lot more of a communal thing than actually cold tenting. So a Dutch oven for sure. And yeah, it's weight in your freight toboggan, but it's a freight toboggan. Like,
that looks like it's an aluminum one too, though, right?
Yeah, I chose this because it's the what's it, wood? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Woody. It's made in the U.S. I got it at the Quiet Water Symposium when I was there a few years back. The guy that made them was there. So I'm not sure if he still makes them or whatever, but I use this all the time. And yeah. And then just remember the things freeze. Like if you bring, I remember my first winter trip, I brought a bag of salad, right? Like, what was it? Right, and then I thought, hey, then we'll have eggs, and it's minus 38 Celsius. They were like pucks of like goo, like it was disgusting. Oh, what do you got? Oh, he's showing something.
Oh, I
Nice
love
little
it.
Dutch oven. Yeah, cast iron too. Yeah.
Ooh,
it's
Oh
cute.
yeah. Where's that from?
Cast iron's great. Unless
You're muted,
carrying-
Nate.
You're on mute, Nate.
Nate,
sorry.
mine's bigger than yours. Just saying, okay.
Yeah, you keep thinking that.
Okay.
Sorry,
this
Chad.
This is a solo cast iron Dutch oven, and what's super neat about it, of course, is that it's cast iron, so the heat it gives off is nice and even and beautiful, especially on a surface like a hot tent stove. But because cast iron traditionally weighs a ton, but because it's so small, it actually it doesn't weigh a big, it's not crazy heavy. And yeah, super cool because you can do all kinds of stuff with it.
I love that.
It's made by Lodge, which is a very reputable American cast iron manufacturer.
Cool. Let's go around the table here. I want to know what everybody's favorite heavy, sit in your gut, keep you warm, high calorie meal is for backcountry winter camping. Let's start with Christina. You always have some delicious looking dishes in your videos.
I just actually did a hot tent canoe trip in Killarney last weekend, and I brought a pre-made roast. I made a roast the weekend before, and I just took a whole bunch of portions and put them in Ziploc bags. So it was meat, gravy, and carrots. And then when I get to camp, like halfway through the afternoon, I just throw it in a pot like Nate has, but not as nice. And just put the lid on and let it kind of warm up, and it smells great. And then sometimes I'll add pasta or rice or potatoes, whatever. But my favorite way to cook on the wood stove is on a cookie sheet. I just put a cookie sheet on the top, and I just make everything on the cookie sheet. Fried sandwiches, eggs, toast, sausages, bacon, omelets, everything. Right on the big cookie sheet, and just use it for everything. And it slides right in the side of my wood stove box. So it doesn't take up a lot of room. And last year, I actually started cooking under the wood stove, which is something I learned from Don Grant. I know a lot of people have been doing it for a long time, but I just started doing it. And I made cookies. I've made salmon under there, and chicken pot pie that was already like made. I just kind of put it under there, and it heats up really nice underneath. So I know I answered more than you asked, but I love
really quick, everybody in the chat, say goodnight to my producer, Russell. He has to duck out. So thanks very much for your help tonight, Russell. It's greatly appreciated.
Russell.
Yeah. Dave, how about yourself? Do you have a favorite dish that you like to partake in?
Well, there's two other components to food, right? The first is it's really, really important on a traveling trip. You got 4 guys, you're out for a week or 10 days or something. And it's not just calories. It's entertainment, and it's mental sustenance as well as physical sustenance. So you got to have a kitchen. You got to have spices. You got to have flavors and smells, and you have to have different consistencies and all that stuff. It's like being on a space mission or something. It's got to soothe your mind as well as your body. So it's good to have a kitchen with you, and I prefer to have a grub box. You open the lid, and that's a table, and then you've got all your condiments and all your basic ingredients right there, so you can whip stuff up in a hurry, and people go, "Ooh, that smells good," right? That's a really important element. And the other aspect is, on a traveling trip, you can't have the weight, so you don't want anything that's pre-made at all. So because you want stuff that you can mix, water with later and cook up properly. So that becomes an exercise in creativity. And it's very, very rewarding at the end of the session when you're taking the train home or something. The guys say, "Man, I think I put on weight on this trip." So I'm not really answering your question, but people want fat. Maybe they wouldn't want fat at home, but if you cook the pre-made bacon, like the microwave bacon, and then you have some rye bread at breakfast, and then you're going to throw that bacon out. Somebody usually says, no, put the bread in the bacon grease, and they flip it and fry it hot and eat it, and it tastes great. Whereas at home, you wouldn't even think of doing something like that.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to Pine Martin's answer to this.
I was going to line that one up, Nate.
And when the apocalypse finally comes, I will be trailing behind Pine Martin by a kilometer or so. Martin, regale us with your dietary habits.
Okay, well, I have an unusual diet. So I have, for about 5 years now, been on a fairly strict ketogenic diet. It's not a religion or anything like that. I don't. I'll go out and get a burger and fries every now and again, but it's a ketogenic diet, which means it's very, very low carb. So no refined flour, no sugar, no starchy vegetables, not a lot of fruit, and very, very high in fat, saturated fats, so animal fats and things like that. And about 20% protein, 70% fat. As skinny as I am, it's because I subsist largely on fat. Carbs are really what sort of cause us to put on a lot of weight. If you can restrict your carbs severely, it'll make a big difference to weight loss, as a lot of people are coming to know. Anyway, I've eaten this way for a long time. So when I go camping, it's a high-fat diet. There's quite a lot of meat, quite a lot of protein, things like rich things like peanut butter and stuff like that. And powdered eggs, because eggs will freeze in winter. So I'll do powdered eggs, a lot of bacon, and of course, meat. Well, what do we do with it when we buy it? Right? We throw it in our freezer, right? So it doesn't matter that it freezes out there, right? You can just take it out of your freezer at home and throw it in the sled or in the toboggan, and out you go. And then you'll thaw it when you're hot tenting, right? If I am going to be cold camping in a snow shelter, well, then it's completely different. I'm not going to be frying up steaks and big plates of bacon and stuff like that. I'm going to be doing something closer to a conventional traveling meal on a canoe trip. A lot of dehydrated meals and things like that. Things that require a quick boil up of water. So when I'm someone asked this in the live chat actually, how do you cook your meals when you're cold camping? In my case, because I cold camp in snow shelters, I use a little Trangia stove, just a little Trangia burner and a little pot stand, and I just boil water on that. And I use methylated spirits. And as long as you have your igloo or Quincy door open, or at least only partially obstructed, and you have a good vent hole. Vent hole doesn't need to be bigger than a loonie or a toonie in diameter. And as long as you're using something like methylated spirits, which is a type of alcohol, or fondue fuel, which is fine to cook indoors with, then you'll be fine. As long as there's a bit of ventilation, you can cook that way. And that's how I cook inside of a Quincy or an igloo. But those are much quicker meals. But I have to disagree with Dave. While I would love to go camping with him and enjoy the kinds of sumptuous meals that he's described, I am much more utilitarian and instrumental cook. My cuisine skills are not so elaborate. Yeah, it wouldn't occur to me to bring all of those raw ingredients and sit around and feed a stew and all that. I just don't like cooking enough to do that. I'm just much more instrumental. It really, for me, is about the calories. It's not about a big, rich culinary experience. So I'm just different that way. But I mean, that's how I am at home, right? I don't have that chip, in my brain.
Dave, are you married? Because I'd go with you in a second.
Okay, food's important to Kevin. I've seen some of his trip videos and stuff, and it's a very important part of Kevin's.
Pine Martin, I would love to trip with you, but hearing about this tonight and knowing that you can't fish, sorry.
Yeah, we're gonna have to settle this. I can fish, but you forget I am fatally allergic to fish, so I don't like to catch a lot of fish. So I go out, and my wife and I would be on a camping trip, a canoe camping trip. We'll catch one fish, and if it's a keeper, that's it. That's dinner. It doesn't need to be big, and I don't need to catch a whole bunch of them. That's it.
Well, I mean, going by Kevin's logic, Martin. I mean, not having a parachute shouldn't stop you from skydiving.
You only need a parachute to skydive twice.
Yeah, you can do it once. You can do it once.
Good
once, yeah. But
I should say that I dehydrate my food. Right, I got that book a long time ago, middle '80s. Dry it, you'll like it.
Yeah.
And I built a dehydrator, one of those great big things, got 7 trays. And since when you're pulling on a toboggan, you have to be more weight conscious than even on a canoe trip. I dry my vegetables. I dry onions, mushrooms, tomatoes, purees, apple leather, and meat. I dry everything and then reconstitute it. And but the other aspect of meal preparation, if you're by yourself, it doesn't matter. You don't need an entertainment value. But if you have 4 people, you want to fend off the expedition fever as long as you can, because someone's always tired or hurting or not feeling that they're doing their job, and it makes them irritable. And, Thor Heyerdahl in his books about taken small groups of people across the oceans and reed boats and things like that. He talks about that. And a convivial, a meal where everybody's socially getting together, experiencing the whole thing is psychologically important on a longer trip.
I agree with that. Given the circumstances, if you're traveling with a group, it's the old gathering. Right?
I think it's important by myself as well. I don't know. It raises my spirits when I'm out there alone. Gives me something to do.
Yeah.
Really quick, everybody. If anybody's interested in a great book on dehydrating, Kevin Outdoors here has a book that he put out called Backcountry Eats. It's all about dehydrating food, meal planning, and stuff like that. I highly recommend that you check it out. Check it out online and maybe pick up a copy because all your questions regarding food are answered within this book. So thanks for posting that, Kevin.
Dennis, I don't want to interrupt, but it's really one guy has asked 3 times about this carbon monoxide, and we really should talk about it.
Let's do that. I'll pull that question up there. I was gonna hold that here for a few minutes, but Jay Gordon's asked: does anyone bring a portable carbon monoxide detector when hot tenting? Is it a necessity? If so, how do you deal with batteries and keeping it functional in the cold condition?
So
I see Dave shaking his head.
Well, yeah, I'll let the experts answer all this, but I just want to emphasize the importance of the answer because the school boards are dropping winter camping, hot tenting. I volunteer, I don't know how many years, taking students out, and they're not allowed to sleep in a heated structure for the last 5 years now through the Durham board, the Toronto board, based because of this carbon monoxide thing. So I'm not sure who else or who would be best to answer it, but someone answer this. Okay, Dave?
Go ahead, Dave.
The native people lived in heated winter structures for 10,000 years where we're standing right now. They didn't have carbon monoxide poisoning ever.
Yeah, your furnace at home will kill you 1,000 times more likely than a fire. The reason I sleep cold is not because I'm worried about carbon monoxide poisoning, although I am worried about getting smoked out if there's a backdraft or something like that in the night, or if the stove were to shift and the pipes were to uncouple. I mean, that could be a nuisance and a problem to have to contend with in the middle of the night. You get soot everywhere, and it would suck. It's just because I like to sleep undisturbed, and it's possible to sleep cold if you have a good sleep system. But because I sleep cold, consequently, I don't use a carbon monoxide detector. I don't know that it's actually necessary. But if you're worried about it, it'll give you peace of mind. I don't think that there'd be any harm. It's not going to, be a problem.
I'm not aware of any deaths that have taken place in a tent because of a wood stove. None ever.
Yeah.
The deaths come
There's enough
from
ventilation, right?
They come from the catalytic converters.
Mm-hmm.
The little propane burners.
Yeah.
Right. If they don't work right, they kill you.
Yeah.
They kill you, and they happen every year, and
every
ice
year,
shelters and things like that. But somehow the people who make the rules equate that to teepees and hot tents, which is nuts.
So just to confirm, so I did my second edition of the winter book too, and I had to do the research once again. I looked everywhere. There hasn't been one recorded death of carbon monoxide poisoning. In theory, it could happen. You're asleep on the ground. The breeze goes down the pipe, goes over the embers of the stove, and it creates carbon monoxide gas while you're sleeping. But the tents that I use, the hot tents, both the Esker and also the snow trucker, they have vents. And also I open up the front flap to aerate because it gets too hot in there, right?
If it's smoky, you'll wake up.
Oh, you will. And I have a neck knife on me, so if something starts burning, I cut. If I had to, I cut the tent and get out of there. But come on,
don't kill the tent.
Well, let's not take kids out winter camping anymore because this might happen. And also, I have a carbon monoxide detector that I told the principal. I said, look, I'll take this with them. So there you go. So it's battery operated and it lithium battery. It's fine. No, we can't do that. I went, this bullshit. Absolute bullshit.
Yeah. There's enough ventilation in any tent. It's not like it's a airtight compartment that you're sleeping within. The snow's going to give off oxygen. within the tent. Any nook and cranny or crack that's in the door, seeping through underneath the bottom of the tent, seeping through the walls of the tent. Because don't forget, the walls do breathe, right? So,
well, and I think the most dangerous thing for winter camping, really, to be quite honest, is the stove. My dog will learn really quickly. Don't go and put your butt against the stove; it'll burn, and then it won't do it again. So, and the other is, when we're my buddies and I are around, I'll say, look, we've had a couple drams. I'm getting up to pee now, and everybody knows that. And then we don't put your hand on the stove, because that's, I think, the number one thing is you're trying to get out of the tent to pee, and you put your hand on the stove, right? So I put a barrier around the stove, so there's a bit of a fence there for the dog and myself.
There's a good comment just showed up. You see that?
Yeah, this story. I heard this story too a couple. Years
same
ago.
thing. But they took the burning coals into their tent with no chimney.
Right.
So there's no place for for all the byproducts to go except in the air that you're breathing. Right. Anything that's got a chimney is going to be okay. But most people for winter camping just do what they know. So they've been with somebody who had an ice fishing hut, and they had one of those catalytic burners that's using propane. So they think, okay, I'll put that in a tent. Just last year, we had 2 people die. It wasn't Algonquin, but it wasn't too far away from there, right?
Yeah.
Same thing, we're in a generator hut or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just, if it's got a chimney, you're okay. But if it doesn't have a chimney,
well, what happens, David? Those 2 incidents that Lost Lake showed and you showed came back to me, and the administrator said, "Well, see what happened? See what happened, Kevin?" I went, "Like, you're listening? What? So you're not listening to my advice. You hired me to be the expert, and yet you're listening to media saying that these things happen. And I'm telling you right now, that had nothing to do with hot tenting.
So,
we're not doing this, Kevin. We're not doing this." I went, "You know what? I'm done. I good luck to you, and good luck to the youth of today." So.
I think there's an important question to answer though, and it's one that comes up a lot, especially when people say, "Well, I'd like to use the existing equipment I have," and there's this Mr. Heater Buddy on sale at Bass Pro, and it's going to take a 1-pound propane tank that I can get at Canadian Tire. So why can't I just use that in my MSR tent, and then I don't need to buy a hot tent?
Yeah, exactly.
And so there needs to be sort of a definitive sort of no. Even if you do bring a carbon monoxide detector for that, the problem you're going to run into, and I've seen this in a number of videos, of course, is the condensation that the propane produces from the inside of the tent will literally create a sheet of ice on the inside of the nylon of your tent. So while it will give you sort of temporary heat directly towards whatever it's blowing at, it's actually counterproductive and extremely dangerous. And it's something that's so tempting for people to do, right? Because here's a $150 winter camping fix. There's your solution, right? But I think that needs to be.
I used to fly a Boeing 777, right? And I'd fly right across the North Pole and everywhere else. And I made more contrails of condensation from burning hydrocarbons than I could ever measure. It's exactly the same thing as what's happening on the inside of the tent. If you burn petroleum, you produce water, and then it condenses. But I think what I've been answering that question with in forums over time is, if it has a chimney and it takes the byproducts of combustion outside, you're okay. But if it doesn't have a chimney, don't light it up.
Mm-hmm. Dave, can you tell us a little bit about the stoves that you do make? Because you're making rather significant wood stoves, carrying them in on not only winter camping, but summer camping trips. And you're using these inside your tent with a large gaping hole in the top of your stove. Tell us a little bit about that, your theory behind that.
A lot of people think that if you put a stove ring, a hole in the top of your stove, you'll get smoked out. and it's just a lack of experience, because when you actually operate one, you understand that the flow is into the stove, not out the stove. Like once you get a column of smoke going up the pipe, there is a draw in to all the nooks and crannies, not out. In fact, just today I was commenting to someone about they have the stovepipe reversed, right? So all the drips were coming down the outside of the pipe and then running down their snow tracker and making those big black stains and everything from the drips. I said, you got your pipe the other way or the other way. And they say, well, if I turn it the other way so the drips go down, it won't fit into the nipple on the top of the stove. So I said, well, buy this $25 crimping tool and put, a crimped end on the end of your bottom pipe, and then it'll fit in the stove, right? You have to be a little bit creative and a little bit do-it-yourselfer with this stuff, because you can't buy what you need. Like our whole interest here is such a small niche that there's never going to be a commercial, well, rarely anyway, a commercial effort to satisfy what we want. You have to get involved a little bit in making, fixing, repairing, building, and modifying. That's my 2 cents anyway.
In defense of that chap who had his pipe upside down, if I'm not mistaken, that pipe was supplied by the manufacturer of the stove, and he was following the manufacturer's instructions and inserting the pipe that way. And a lot of people's intuition is to do it that way. They want the female part on top, and they want the male to go up inside. I think that if they do it the other way, smoke will leak out of the pipe, and they don't want smoke in the tent. And they're worried about that.
But they don't understand that the draw is in.
That's
out.
right. That's right. Yep. Exactly. Your fire and the heat in that pipe, the fire has to get air, and that air is coming from inside your tent and is going inside. And if there's cracks, if there's seams in your pipe, you'll actually have air go in. Now, I've never actually had smoke come out through the cracks, right? But it is important that all the creosote and the pitch and all that stuff that's inside, that might be accumulating inside your pipe, and there shouldn't be much if you know what you're doing. If you're burning hardwood, you're burning at you're getting a proper combustion at the right temperature. The smoke coming out should be actually fairly clear. It shouldn't be dark and sooty, and even white smoke's not that great. It indicates that there's a lot of moisture in there. But if you're getting a proper combustion, you're not going to get a ton of accumulation. But if you do get that accumulation, you want it to coat the inside of the pipe, run down and right back down into the stove, and where it will combust as it gets close to the stove or back into the stove.
Okay. Yeah. Stop with the sex talk, guys. Stop. All right. On top, it's wrong. So I think it's a really good idea, because we're getting to like almost 9:30. It's past my bedtime. I have to work tomorrow. Dave, I know as musicians you have a guitar near you. You must, right?
Not handy, but
hold on, Kevin.
Yes, you do.
Kevin, hold on. Actually, you know what? Because the show's gone late and we've covered quite a bit, but we've missed a ton of really good questions in the chat, and I'd really like to accommodate those in the chat with some questions that they've had. Sure. So I just made a post there that I'm going to post probably the next 10 or so questions on screen, and we'll give sort of like in a nutshell answers. We'll allow one of the guests to maybe take and give their take on whatever the question answer might be, just so that we can try and get as much information across to everybody in the chat. So if you guys want to put some of your questions that I may have missed, let's do it that way. Okay, here's a really, that's more a question. OG in the Canoe is asking how many people are doing this for the first time. So feel free to post your answers in the chat for that there. All newbies are welcome to watch this show and learn, right? So, okay, what were you saying, Kevin? You were asking about guitars.
Oh, no, so Dave is an amazing musician, but he's got an incredible song about winter camping.
Oh.
He's putting like the thumb screws together.
Yeah, but he's good.
Like, no warning of any kind, right?
No.
You know what? If Dave wants to, maybe we could close the show out on that there. That would be pretty cool.
It's good.
No pressure, Dave. Like, you know. No, you know what? Or we could save that for another show.
No. Dave is good. Yeah. He needs to show his talent. Come on.
Yeah, there's no pressure here, like none whatsoever.
We got some questions fleeting in here. Let's start with the first one. Just looking for a cheap, light titanium stove. Any companies you would recommend in Canada? Does anybody have a take for that?
You don't need titanium. It's not necessary at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you looking for a wood stove or like a twig stove?
No. My wood stove, like the one that's in that video of mine is, and it's all also, there's a bit of a construction video on my website. It weighs 11 pounds, including the stovepipe, and it'll heat an 8x10, which will serve 3 or 4 people. And for 11 pounds, including the pipe, what do you really gain with titanium? You'll save 2 or 3 pounds. That's it. But the cost will double or triple. There's no point.
Yeah.
What is
you're
the
paying
size
for
of
the
the
titanium.
firebox on that stove?
Pardon?
What is the size of the firebox on that stove?
It's 9 by 9 by 22.
Oh, that's really big.
It wouldn't work for you, Christina, for spending a night. But for a traveling stove, it's a good balance, because that 9 by 9 by 22 will be serviced quite fine by a 3-inch stovepipe. And all the 3-inch stovepipe then fits inside the stove box. You don't need a separate compartment. So it's really simple. I have bigger stoves and I have smaller stoves, but the bigger stove is for like a permanent winter setup, 12 by 12 by 26 or something like that. That's more like what you use. And smaller ones, they're good for quick fire or even twig stoves. I made one of those not too long ago. But I really, titanium is a sort of a promoted thing, and there's no good cost reason to do one. However, a lot of people are a little reluctant to try and make one. They think a wood stove is a really scientific thing, like a rocket or something, and it's not. All you need to do with a wood stove is have a fire in a box and have the smoke go up the chimney. That's it. Once you've done that, you've achieved the goal. Everything's a success. And anything beyond that is just a refinement of success, a degree of goodness. And anyway, that's my input on that.
Cool. Fleet Captain 210's asking, preferred transport method, pulk or toboggan?
Yeah, it depends on the
have
terrain.
A preference?
Yeah, terrain matters. In hilly areas, I like a pulk. I find it's better on big flats and opens. A toboggan is better, especially the modern toboggans that are made out of that incredibly slick plastic. But in really, really super hilly, uneven terrain, I find that they tip over just as much as a pulk would, and I find a pulk more practical around camp, sort of more useful for stuff when you got to go fetch wood and stuff like that. Also, it's fun to just go, sliding down a hill on your pulk when you got all the gear off of it. Those modern freight toboggans, they're not so great to sit on. It's not like sitting on a wooden toboggan that's stiff and is a proper platform to sit on. You'll feel every little bump going down that hill on one of those sort of crazy carpet style toboggans. So it really depends on the terrain, in my estimation.
Once again, Dave has a great video on some sleds that he has built with some great ideas using old skis and lightweight wood and stuff like that. You might want to check out Dave's videos on that, as well as the stoves too. They were both very interesting videos. So, yeah.
I just like to point out, I don't make any money on that, right? I don't have any products for sale or anything like that. So I've been doing this since the middle 80s and have thrown in the garbage stuff, which didn't work as well as other stuff. And it's just evolved. And I agree with what Martin says there. If there's any pack to the snow whatsoever, a pulk where you can get the bulk of the load up off the snow pulls easier than a toboggan. And I tested that on trips where, 3 different guys, 18 inches of untouched snow, toboggan, pulk, and I have another kind of pulk, which is the U.S. Army surplus Alaskan thing that looks like a ski patrol sled for bringing the bodies down a ski hill, right? We had all 3 of those lined up, same weight, 3 different guys, same field, lake of untouched snow, and pull tests. And the toboggan was the worst of the 3 of those. One of the other reasons I don't like a toboggan is because even though you're super, super weight conscious, dried all your food, you got down instead of synthetic, all that stuff, As soon as you hit the trail, all the snow wedges into the side of the toboggan and adds 20 pounds to your load instantly, or 30 pounds. Whereas with a pulk, you can it's much easier to put some sort of canvas or polyethylene tarp around everything, keep the snow off.
Cool.
And you never ever pull an unbroken trail. That never ever happens,
right?
Because you're in front of it, right? So you got either skis or snowshoes, and the trail is always at least half packed.
Oh,
and
here's an important principle with respect to hauling, sled hauling. This is sort of one of the things that sort of always try to instruct people on. If there's someone who's not hauling, let that person break trail as much as possible ahead of you, right? So that the person who does have to haul doesn't have to, even they don't have to break trail. They're following in the flow to the person ahead of them, right? And you do that, and then you switch around, you rotate, right? Yeah. You leave the sleds where they are, and everyone just hauls everyone else's gear. You go out as a team. It's not you're hauling your gear and I'm hauling my gear. It's we're doing this as a team.
I'm following Callan.
And that gets around the problem of some people having sort of a more efficient hauling system than other people. And so if you've got a more nimble system that gets through the trees and those tight spots and stuff like that, and you're going ahead, you're going to find it a lot easier to get through that. But then the poor guy who's got the 10-foot toboggan behind you can't get through, right? And so now they have to break trail because they have to leave the float that you created, right? So I think it helps if everyone thinks of this is like a wagon train. This is communal, and we are just going to switch positions. And I'm going to haul sled for a while, and then I'm going to break trail, and then I'm going to go to the back, and then move my way forward. And that I think is the way to do it if you're traveling any real distance. I mean, if you're only going like an hour or two, then it doesn't matter as much. But if you're going to be hauling for hours, really you want to make it a team effort. But even on a short distance, it's a good idea to make it a team effort, right? Or you could do what I do. If I go with Nate, since he's Superman, I just let him break trail ahead of me with his wider sled, and I follow in his float. And he hasn't figured this out yet. So
I just remember a few years back, Camper Christina, you were in the Queen Elizabeth off of Devil Lake, and I watched that video of yours, and you had a hard time going up that hill. And the next week, Andy, Tim, and I were going up that hill, and I went, I remember her not having a good time on this hill, and we had a terrible time on that hill. It's a bad hill, and that's the only way we progressed is that we did what Pine Martin was saying. We switched. So Andy would go ahead with nothing, just snowshoes, and make a trail compact, and we would even wait for a bit for the trail to compact in the cold temperature. You're not in a hurry out there. And it took us to get to the first pond. It took us, which was probably 2 kilometers. It took us half a day.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I remember watching your video and you were by yourself. And I think that's fantastic. I love going solo tripping, but winter camping solo, oh my Lord, it's not easy. There's so much work, right?
Did you climb on top of the gear and slide down the hill too on the way?
Yeah, we did, but that's that's another story. It's just because we're old.
That was fun.
We can really get injured when you get older. Then you start doing the silly things that you're in your 20s. Like you get injured.
Cool.
On a traveling trip, if there's no particular pressing agenda, not like Nate's buddy there, but it's nice to camp one day, put the trail across to the next campsite. Spend 2 nights in every spot, but pack down the trail to the next place, right? In between. And then you gotta, and on the in-between days when you pack down the trail to the next spot, you also put up some firewood and cut a tent pole, right? So then when you move to camp, everything's real simple. I mean, that's a luxury, but it's a nice way to do it.
Cool. All righty. Lost Lakes is asking, night is long in the winter. How do you entertain yourselves?
Cribbage.
Audiobooks.
Audiobooks.
If I'm by myself, I'll read or I'll listen to a podcast that I've got stored on my phone. I practice a lot of stupid bushcrafty stuff. I'll practice feather sticks. I'll practice bow drill fires because it's really hard to get them going in winter. I'm trying to learn how to use the strap drill, which is an old Inuit technique. No luck yet with that one.
I'll-
in winter, I can do it in summer. I can't do it in winter.
I'll download Lost Lakes videos off YouTube and watch them.
There you go. There's the answer of the night.
Yeah. Well, I got one better. I use my I use my satellite device to watch Lost Lakes hidden TikTok account channel.
Hidden?
Really?
There you
go.
Awesome.
Is that for real?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'll give you the details later, Kevin. Yeah. Jonathan's got a whole other ball game going on TikTok.
Does he do the dance?
Oh, he does. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Jason McClellan is asking, hub shelter ice tent for hot tent substitute. Good bad idea or bad idea? Is that like the ice fishing shelters?
I don't have one personally, but I know lots of people have converted them and they work great from what I've heard.
They're
and
kind of
seen.
dark, aren't they?
I've seen them converted. I've seen them at Algonquin Park. I've seen people convert them into hot tents, but yeah, they're all black lined on the inside, so you could actually see down the ice hole, right?
And they use the window to put the stove jack in.
Yeah, yeah. So that's an opportunity if you don't mind the dark during the day.
Yeah, but you're also going to get frosted up quite a bit in there because it's not as breathable. I mean, I've actually tried them with people, and it's really affordable thing. It's a lot better than buying like a snow truck or whatever. Just that the ventilation isn't the best, and also you're going to get a lot of frost build up inside for it. But if you can manage that, then that's fine. And also make sure that ring that you put the pipe in is something that actually is not going to burn.
Actually, that brings to mind something that was mentioned by Dave, and that is dark shelters. So days are short in winter. You lose light quickly. And if you want to sort of save on lantern life and stuff like that, because if you're using battery powered lanterns and stuff like that, in the cold, things go fast. You want a shelter that is bright, something like a hot tent that by Snow Trekker or Esker or something like that. Those are gleaming white. And those are great because they let light bleed in. So it's not dark when you go into your shelter in the middle of the day. It feels like you're outside. It's so bright inside. And at night, when you turn on a lantern, you've got all these nice white walls and roof around you that reflects that light back at you. Any dark shelter, hot tent or otherwise, is going to feel really gloomy and depressing. So if you can get a winter shelter that is yellow or white or something like that, something cheery, it makes a big difference psychologically. I find those dark greens for a while were really popular in those bell tents and stuff like that. The old scout tents and stuff like that were like a dark gray or dark green and stuff like that. Those kind of military colors. I've seen camo ones, and they're really dark inside in the middle of the day. You need a lantern inside the middle of the day. I never need a lantern inside my hot tent in the middle of the day on anything well, I mean, even on a cloudy day, I don't in the middle of the day. But that's because it's white and it lets light bleed through. So go for a light colored tent if you have the option.
Here's a question for Christina. Okay, yeah.
What?
Oh, I was going to direct this at, did you have something you wanted to add to that, Nate?
No.
No, it was just after Christina answers this Canvas question, I do have something we should point out or very quickly cover.
Oh.
Sure. Christina, I'll direct this one at you because you have made your own tents.
I use Painter's drop cloth from Rona or Home Depot. It's about $48, $50 for, I think it's 12 feet by 15 feet, which is the biggest one. I only need one for the solo hot tent, and for the bigger one I use two, and the teepee I use two. So $100 material. It's pretty cheap. It's 8-ounce canvas. It was funny. I was watching the presentation from the Winter Symposium, and I think, Kevin, I asked you what the ounce of your Snow Trekker was. And I don't know if it was 8 or 10 or 11. I'm not sure. But I think, Dave, you said you had 3-ounce canvas? Is that
yeah. No, well, it was so the original Egyptian cotton tents from the MNR were 4-ounce Egyptian cotton. But of course, if you let them touch the stove, they could burn. right?
Yeah.
And then later there were liability issues, so they made them heavy. And also concurrent with that was motorized travel, which was a new thing. So all of a sudden you didn't need a 15-pound tent anymore. Didn't matter if it was 50 pounds because it's being moved by airplanes or snow machines or ATVs or whatever, boats.
Right.
So then you got the 11-ounce poly cotton with the fire retardant, which is awful stuff. Because you, like I said, you end up with a 50-pound little tent, which takes an entire toboggan all by itself. It's useless for hand hauling. So what I did is I used the 3-ounce ripstop nylon, uncoated, except for the stove corner, because obviously you don't want the nylon to melt. So that little corner of the stove where it's where the stove is, I got that made out of the crappy modern stuff, but the rest of it is light.
Yeah,
And cheap.
I know some people that have used the ripstop, and also silk cloth, I believe, is good too. A bunch of people recommended that to me, but I really like the canvas. I think it's perfect. It's a good weight. It's breathable. I don't have any problems with it, and it's not super heavy. It's nice and bright, so checks all the boxes for me.
Now, Christina, you had to do some waterproofing on that as well, did you not?
Yeah, I sprayed it with Wood's canvas waterproofing spray. The waterproofing actually cost more than the fabric did. It's very expensive to waterproof a tent and fireproof a tent. It's I think the big one, I think it was $570 it cost me to make the tent, and then it was another $220 for the proofing, like all the sprays and stuff. So really expensive.
I don't waterproof anything.
Pardon?
I don't waterproof anything. I just use a fly sheet.
Yeah.
And in response to what Martin said, initially I started using a fly sheet that was just the typical blue tarp, right? But I don't like living in blue. So I switched to white, or what they call it clear when you buy it. And again, lets lots of light through. And that way your tent doesn't have to be waterproof at all, because the snow slides off the fly sheet.
That's a good option. Well, whoever asked that question, if you want to send me an email, I can give you some more information. I have 2 3-part video series on making the second and third tents, and all the information is in there. So,
so Christina, how did you sew this? Do you have a heavy duty machine, like a sail?
Just a regular sewing machine, an old one too, not even a good one.
Did you make a big sewing table, like platform thing, or?
No, I was living at the staff house at work at the time, so we had a huge dining room table, and I just used that, just sewed it in sections, and everything was double stitched and then zigzagged, so it wouldn't fray.
Christina, what was the name of the waterproofing you used again?
Wood's canvas spray. You can get it at Canadian Tire. It's up to $19.99 a can now. Pretty expensive stuff. They sell it right where you can get the silicone stuff for your regular tents.
Sure.
So that's
okay, Nate, you had something you wanted to add that you thought was fairly important. Let's do that.
Well, we've talked a lot about stoves, but we haven't talked about the wood that you need to put in them. So for a lot of people that are going, oh, well, okay, so we've got all this stuff on a toboggan or a pulk, and we haven't really discussed the difference between those two things. Like my friend Jim here pulls a tiny skinny little piece of plastic he calls a toboggan, and then I pull a thing made of black plastic that's made by Pelican that you can buy at Canadian Tire, and they both work in different ways, but there's definitely a difference between the two. But so we're talking about putting all that gear and lugging it with us into the bush or somewhere to set up our hot tent and our winter camping experience. But we haven't talked about the importance of the wood that you're going to put into the stove to keep you warm or to cook with. And so that can vary greatly depending on whether you are in a provincial park or on Crown land. And so it's extremely important as to Jim's watching TikTok. So it's extremely important to kind of sort out where you're going to get your wood and how you're going to get it. And I think the obvious thing to point out is if you're on Crown land, the importance of being able to identify standing dead and how to process that versus how to mitigate the lack of being able to harvest wood in a provincial park versus the wood you need to bring with you in order to stay warm and to cook.
Mm-hmm. And what about preferences for wood? Preferably hardwood over softwood?
Doesn't exist up north.
Yeah, if you're in the boreal forest, it's all going to be conifers and resinous woods. Yeah. But I mean, around here, I live in Muskoka. There's a nice mix of hardwoods and softwoods, and so I'll go with oak and maple whenever I can find it. Avoid hemlock, no matter what. And I mean,
reason being, why, Martin?
Oh, it just doesn't burn very well. It's hard to cut and split properly. You get a million splinters. It just sucks. It's just a terrible wood. It's fine for really, really rough outdoor carpentry, for making like outdoor flower boxes for, vegetable gardens or something. But, for the rest of it, forget about it. It's very cheap wood. So I avoid that wood. And so I where possible, I burn exclusively hardwood. And I will use resinous woods and conifers just as kindling and fire starter, and that's it. I won't burn it otherwise. I don't like a lot of soot and stuff like that. I don't want if I get improper combustion at some point, if I'm inattentive, if I'm busy doing something outside and my stove is going and stuff like that, I don't want a lot of creosote buildup. So I try to avoid that. And you get a nice long slow burn with hardwood, so you get a cleaner burn if you know what you're doing. If you know how to operate your stove, everything else being equal, you'll get a cleaner burn, and you get a really, really hot stove that lasts for a while, so you're not constantly feeding it. If you're in the boreal forest, you're constantly feeding that stove because the fuel is consumed so rapidly. It gives off a lot of heat, but it's consumed completely in no time. So I try to avoid conifers, and evergreens as much as possible, except as kindling and fire starter. Yep.
Except for tamarack.
Tamarack's a little harder.
Yeah, I
haven't. Tamarack is gold.
Yeah, I haven't used it actually, but that's because I almost never see tamarack where I am.
As long as you're sure it's dead, right?
Yeah. Well,
yeah, hard to tell a dead tamarack actually.
But if you find
no needles on it in the wintertime.
But it's like so Pine Martin, really good point. I totally agree with you. But hardwood, softwood, right? So hardwood is deciduous, softwood is carnivorous, and it's got more resin in it. So it's good to get a fire going, though. I wouldn't start a fire with maple. Like what the hell? Yeah. You get it going with your balsam, whatever.
Or birch. Birch is technically a hardwood, but it lights fast and it burns through quickly, just like
it really does. But it's so crap for the overnight. So if you don't want to, pee through the night and you want to get an all-nighter, for sure, oak is fantastic because the resins of the fibers are so compact. Ironwood, because they used to make the whole the wheel things for the my lord
the mills.
Yes.
Well, they made gears and they made gears and they made mills and spindles and things like that out of ironwood.
So if you can put that, but if you're in the far north and you don't have a lot of hardwood, if you're in along Lake Superior, that sort of area, you got a mixer up there. But if you're in Timmins or Red Lake, whatever, you got jack pine, right? So it's going to really, that's all you got. But if you find tamarack, it is seriously like a golden hue around it when you find it and it's dead, because that is the most hard softwood you can find.
Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you. That's really good.
If you find a lake where they killed they trapped all the beaver out of it, right? And the lake level dropped, and the tamarack grew in the swamps, and then the beaver came back and flooded the swamps, and the tamarack die, and they just stand there drying for 8 years. That is perfect. That is Chico. That is as good as firewood gets.
Yeah.
Christina,
you have a tip for wood as well?
Yeah, I do a little cheat. I know you're shocked. But I bring a couple of those 3-hour logs when I go on an overnight trip or a couple night trip, and I put one of those in at nighttime just before I go to bed with a nice big piece of wood. And
now I know how you get through the night. That's how, because you said
It
you
burns
said
for
you.
3 hours.
You know what? Somebody was asking
They're
about that
very,
earlier in
very
the chat,
heavy
so
though.
glad we
But
covered
to
that.
me,
Tim.
they're worth it. I always know that I've got at least 6 hours there. If I bring 2 of them, I got 6 hours in the night where I'm going to stay nice and warm.
That's smart. Okay, so earlier when you were saying, no, I just, I open the door and I throw a log in, and I'm like, wait, it just like that, it lights up from what few coals are left in there after 3 hours when the stove's gotten cold, and how is that? Now it makes sense. So yes, that does work actually. That's a smart solution actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as soon as the fire starts burning down, I wake up. So it never goes out. But there's always something there.
Well, if you're on a traveling trip and you're not camping in prepared sites, it's all about firewood, right? It's all about firewood. So you're walking along and the lake shore or the river, whatever it is, and about 3 o'clock you start looking for a campsite. And you don't look for pretty views and things like that. You look for firewood. So you try and find a place where a whole bunch of jack pine grew up together after a forest fire, and then they choked each other out and died with, rounds that are about 4 inches across, and they're leaning up against each other, and they are perfect for poles, for building your tent, and then for firewood. And that's where you set up. And if it isn't a perfect campsite, otherwise, so what? The firewood outweighs everything else.
Yep. Okay, panel. We are approaching the 10 o'clock hour here, which is an hour overtime, which I think is pretty good. I do want to ask or take one more question here from Julia B. Regarding packing a sled. Let's get this one quickly so we can close the show up, and then we'll just carry on with some conversation in the green room and maybe a beverage or two. So Julia is asking, is there a specific way that you're supposed to pack a sled weight-wise for efficiency?
Heavy things close to the bottom as much as possible so it doesn't tip over. You want things as low as possible, and the heaviest things as low as possible, just so they don't tip over. If you got too much weight on the top, it's just going to make your load top heavy. And as soon as you go over some uneven ground, or you're traversing across the side of a hill, everything's going to tumble. So that's what I do. As for what goes in front, what goes in back, it seems to differ depending on whether I'm hauling a pulk or a toboggan. On one trip, on a new toboggan I bought last year, I put the stove in the front, right behind the curl of the toboggan, and I don't know why, but that did not work. And I can't think of the explanation, but it didn't work. And I just thought, okay, well, let's try something. And I just shifted everything around, and I moved it to the back, and then it worked. And I was like, I don't understand what it was. If it was it digging in too much? Was it, I don't know. But it was flipping over all the time, and I was plowing into the snow. It wasn't riding up. And the stove's not that heavy compared to what I had there before. Or rather what I had after. So I'm not sure what the reason is, why you should put things where you should along your toboggan or along your pulk. But I always just try to keep the weight low.
Yep. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
I don't double stack loads ever.
The Pelican sled you might buy at Canadian Tire, which is totally great, and 1 million people use them, and they are very effective. Do not be afraid to modify it to add straps, because it will not come with those pre-modifications for you to add onto. But there's a zillion resources out there to show you how to modify that kind of stuff in order to put the gear in that you need and make it secure. Because that is a big factor in those sleds, because you're going to be traversing uneven terrain. So don't be afraid to get creative within reason to make sure that your load is secure.
Excellent. Well, I think that about wraps it up for this fine Tuesday evening.
No, Dave has not sung yet.
Oh, come on, man! I haven't played that song in years.
It's a good song.
Oh, as he reaches for the guitar.
Maybe next time, all right?
No. You're far more talented than that. Come on.
Dave, yes or no?
No, Dave. You need to sing the
No,
song.
I'm seeing the head. I'm seeing the head.
Long enough.
Okay. We'll make it up.
No.
My brother says, he says leave him wanting more. So maybe that's a
No, Dave. It's not that. It's a really good song. You're an incredible musician, and that song is all about winter, and it will jab everybody's heart when you sing it.
You should have given me, enough warning to get through at once, man.
Well, I know that's me. Sir.
Okay, I don't think it's fair that we.
No.
Yeah. You know what? Maybe we'll have him open up the show next week for your.
That works better for me, Kevin. Sorry.
Yeah. That's all good.
I've been doing banjo lately. I've been writing songs on banjo, so.
Oh my
and
Lord.
playing Dadcat. So,
well, if you're not going to sing it, everybody go to his site. He's got what 4 or 5 albums, right?
4 albums, yeah.
Yeah.
Two of them are about the bush. Just 2 of them are about the bush.
They're all amazing though. They're all amazing. So check them out, and for sure, like the one that you. What's the name of it though? Something box.
Gyprock Box.
Yeah, it's a winter tripping.
Well, this same guy I learned my bush stuff from, right? I visited him when he was on a course in Toronto, and we're in the airport Hilton at Pearson, and we're going to go out for dinner, so I dropped by his hotel room, and he's got this big sprig of one of these ornamental pines, mungo pine or something, that's from the shrubbery on the front of the hotel, like right outside the door, and he cut it and he put it across his television set, and it filled up the room with this wonderful odor, and I said. And I said, well, that's kind of nice. And he said, yeah, it's not bad for a Gyprock box. And I thought, Gyprock Box.
Well, so you don't have to sing it.
There's a song there. Okay. So
Dave, you don't have to sing it, whatever. Just, what's the chorus? Just say the chorus.
I'd rather have lake, trees, and rocks than hide away in a Gyprock box.
There you go.
That's the
theory. Search it up on iTunes, people. Okay, anyways. Kevin, Nate, Martin, Dave, Christina, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been great. I think everybody's learned quite a bit. Everybody's asking for a part 2. You never know if we can make this happen, but it won't happen for the next couple of weeks because we have shows booked for the next couple of weeks. Thank you all again for participating tonight.
Thanks for the opportunity.
I'm going to put you all into the basement, close up the show, and I'll see you there for after show cocktails. So I'll see you all in a brief moment.
Not all.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us for the entire 3 hours tonight. Great show. Hopefully everybody has learned something. You know what? There are 2 more episodes like this, one from last season and one from season 1. If you go back into our video library, you'll see that we have our winter camping shows, and a lot was discussed that we might not have discussed tonight, and they're all great learning resources. So by all means, please do check them out. Don't forget to get your answers in for the great swag giveaway that we have this week. You have until Saturday evening at midnight. We'll say midnight. And you can send that to coasprize@gmail.com. The answer. Here's the question once again, and here's the place that you would need to send that. To everybody who watched, thank you very much. For the super chats that came in, thank you very, very much. And if you haven't already done so and you enjoyed the show, please do hit the subscribe button and maybe that thumbs up. We got 161 thumbs up. Let's see if we can get this to 175 before I click that off button. Anyways, don't forget, next week, join us and laugh until you cry. Kevin Callan's birthday, we're going to be having a Kevin Callan roast. And basically, we have some great people coming on to tell some good stories about our good friend Kevin Callan. And it's going to be a very entertaining evening. And who knows, that one might go into overtime as well. I had somebody reach out to me this past week, tell me that I should be pre-recording my shows and editing and stuff like that. And I'd like to get everybody's take on that. I kind of like this live format. I know we run into overtime quite often, but you know what? I like the interactiveness of being a live show. So let me know what you think. Drop me an email at canoehound@gmail.com. Let me know what you think there. Anyways, in the meantime, everybody, see you next week. Have yourselves a good one. Stay safe and keep the adventures alive.